Okay. So, all right.
Good morning. I'd like to bring the NIAA Realignment Committee meeting on this May 30th, 2023 at the NIAA office. Having to order. Good morning. Good to see your faces here. Let's go ahead. I see the energy in your eyes, so we can go ahead and get this done. At this time, let's stand for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Roll call, please.
Okay. Roland Smallworth.
Here.
Pamela Snow. Here. Art Anderson.
Here.
Mike Brooks.
Here.
Sean Fitzsimons.
Here.
Ron Grzon.
Here. Here. Here.
This time provides an opportunity for citizens to address the committee about members need to agree to the committee as a promise.
Tia, can you speak up? The mics aren't picking people up. I've told them to stop.
I just didn't want to interrupt you. So here, let's hold off on a second. We've got a sound issues.
We're picking up fine from that part of the table. We are not picking up from anywhere else.
Yeah, I can hear you just fine. Can't hear you. Well.
Anything that seems to be coming from this direction.
We can open some room in the tables here and have, but that's not gonna help the other side of the room. So do we need to reset both sides? Or-
Yeah. No, I need to.
Ray, Dell, Kevin, somebody just talk in that area to see if I can pick you up.
Welcome to the NIAA.
Yep. I did. I don't know if that's Ray's booming voice.
You can see it on the mic up here. That side table is not being picked up.
If you want, we can angle this table. Go. So that helps.
No. Why is he trying to record the meeting?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I don't think getting closer to it isn't going to help. For whatever reason, it's not picking up on that side of the room.
Oh, do you mind trying to say something? It's coming in very faint, but I can hear it.
For everybody who is listening in on YouTube on this or is joining us in Zoom, we are aware of the audio issues. We are attempting to fix those. Please do be patient with us. We'll get to it just as quickly as we can. Thank you.
Hold on.
The old computer, yeah.
Just for a minute, thank you, sir. We're gonna try and make sure, see who's picking up what.
Buddy, can you talk first?
Yeah. Testing, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Testing, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah. 1, 2, 3.
Sometimes we're gonna have to just go and give that turf ball usually are at home. Peter's gonna have to probably do that.
We could use a coach's voice.
All right, Tia, if you would, all right, we're gonna get back in set here. Tia, if you would, please, let's try this one more time from the top. Thank you. Go for it.
This is from Rex Hardy. I realize that staff uses rubric scores to determine which classification to place schools into for sport. Once that is done, however, I would recommend weighing more heavily on geographic location and rubric scores for determining divisions with the classification is. By using a pure certainty method, oftentimes you end up with teams in the same division that are clear across town from each other, while the school down the street is in a different division. I believe you can still use the rubric scores to help with setting up some of the division, but perhaps you could sit down with a map and take the top 4 schools and put them in divisions based on geography, then take the next 4 schools or 2 schools and repeat the process. At the end of the process, maybe a school or 2 will need to move to the other division to create more of a balanced division. But I would think for the most part, you can put all the schools on one side of the town in the same division. This will allow for teams to build consistent rivalries between neighboring schools and allow for shorter travel time to get in the way of contests. You would also see more fans at away games if you didn't have to travel so far to attend. Just a suggestion, I know that no system is perfect, but creating more geographic-based divisions in all sports would be greatly appreciated by fans, athletes, coaches, and administrators, even if it comes at the cost of trying to predict a perfect competitive split between 2 divisions. Although the rubric score helps too, I'm sure you realize that it is not a perfect predictor of future success of programs. With that in mind, loosely the rubric scores to balance out place more priority on geographic location to determine where to place the school. I believe I missed the deadline to have to start the public comment at the upcoming meeting, but I wanted to be sure to submit my suggestions for those on the NIAA staff that work with divisional lines for each sport. Thanks, Rex Hardy, parent of student athletes, Academy of International Studies. PS is email partially motivated by many long trips across town. During rush hour during the boys volleyball season, it would have been nice if more of our scheduled division games were on.
Thank you, Tia. And next, we actually have a live public comment. I'd like to call up Ms. Erica Murphy, please.
Good morning. Yeah, you go right, yeah, that's fine, Erica. Where are you? Yeah, that's right, here we go. Good. Thanks.
Erica Murphy, I'm the athletic director of Truckee High School. And it's always, I think, better for me to show up in person, kind of see face to face. I did send an email, we went through our president on a recent request for Truckee High School softball. This isn't an item on today's agenda, it's likely to be on next week down in Las Vegas, which I will not fly down for. Sorry, that's kind of my prompted to be here today. Truckee High School softball 3A is asking to go independent on this next 2-year cycle. Truckee softball is not asking to move up, move down, we're just simply asking to rebuild. That's what we need to do. The coaches that we currently have in that program have been there for a decade. And they see the struggles that we have, and it's not facilities. I know was a very bad year for snow, and pretty much we had no games for baseball, softball, everything was in Reno. We were away, that was it, and it has nothing to do with facilities, it more so has to do with what's building our program. And so the coaches are gonna take a step back approach to finish what would be known as our 3A league, just the West, and not travel the East, not ask the East to travel. This season, we had a softball game with Lowry, the varsity was unable to make it to Golden Eagle, and that's where we relocated one of our games. And we finally, at the end of the season, just didn't ask them to come play us. We forfeited the game because we knew Lowry had a very strong softball program. To have them travel 2.5, 3 hours for a 3-inning game, which is pretty much 90% of our games for softball are 3 innings. We have diversity quite often. Anyway, we want a flexible schedule. We want to be able to move down these 2A games to move local games. And we don't want to infringe on anybody else's large amount of travel, especially in the East, because we strong softball program and we have signs. Okay. Okay. Anyway, thank you for listening. Thank you for looking at our request. Again, we're filing independent. We've gone through the proper channels. We've sent to the president, Mr. Ray Parks, and so far we have not had any dissent in our group. I think everybody understands that Truckee softball needs a little chance to rebuild, just like some other schools have done in our local area, like Brewster a decade ago with football and so forth. So anyway, thank you so much.
Thank you. And in the outlying areas and those that are in the Zoom land, are there any public comments in your area? Thank you. We'll go on to agenda item 6. The approval of the May 30th, 2023 meeting agenda, please, for possible action.
Ray Parks will make a motion to approve the minutes.
Just thank you.
Absolutely. Flexible agenda, thank you, Ray. Second. We also have a second, thank you very much. Any further questions or discussion? All those in favor say aye. Any nays? The ayes have it, thank you very much. We'll go to agenda item 7, the approval of April 5th, 2023 meeting minutes for possible action.
If I get that one right, we'll make a motion to approve those minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Parks.
Second now.
We also have a second, thank you. Any further questions or discussions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it. Thank you. We'll go to agenda item 8. Spring season sport by sport placement for 5A, 4A, and 3A teams for possible action. Turn it over to Mr. Nelson.
All right, here we go. What a fall it's been, huh? We finally made it to the spring season. We've gone through a lot of different situations up in the fall and winter. But we know the process. I think we've got a good feel for how things can move along. And so we'll start on page 9, looking at our scores, first of all, from the northern rubric. And again, based on actions that previously taken, we know that the northern baseball will stay with our 9 teams already set in the 5A. And then we have our 12 schools set in the 3A North, as the way it is right now. I think we'll talk about 4A and 5A here a little later down the road. So the rubric points that you see there are really more for information purposes. We know we've got North Hub, North Valleys, and Worcester, which are set and designated into 3A. So your other schools, Reno, Bishop Manogue, Queen Douglas, Galena, Spanish Springs, Demonte Ranch, Reed, and Carson are the 5A schools, even though the points that you see there for the full rubric as outlined for baseball on page 9 for the North. Any questions about anything on the North? Again, that's already preset, done. We know what schools are going there. Mr. Parks, right? No perceived changes. We've already approved this. We're the 3 schools that will be joining you on a full-time regular basis with all sports, right? Other than soccer in the fall, we're very much that, so.
Yeah,
Okay. Thank you. All right, I'm gonna make a little note real quick, just a verbal note to all of you with regards to page 10. We'll switch to that with our Southern baseball rubric, because this is where our work's gonna be today for this sport. About 5A, 4A, and 3A, finding our dividing lines. I will give you all a heads up that in the June 7th meeting, we will have an appeal that is being endorsed from a principal in the southern area. And it is basically endorsing a appeal from the Southern Nevada Baseball Coaches Association. As you know, the NIAA itself doesn't recognize coaches associations, but clearly we love input from our coaches. So we have worked through the proper channels. In this case, again, it's not in here because this is a June 7th item. Keith Whipperman from Centennial High School will have an appeal on there, and the appeal will really be more about joining, from what my understanding of it is, a 5A and a 4A Southern together and having a unique breakoff playoff system. Again, that's not for the here and now today, but I really want to be transparent to say it will be something that will be looked at. What we have here today is following the policies and procedures. That is governing this meeting. That's what's governing this group and the process that we go through. So sticking straight by the policies and procedures, what we have on page 10 are some decisions to make. Is where does that line go for the 5A schools? Where does that line go for 3A schools? And then what do we fit in there for the 4A schools? So on page 10, you can see what some numbers are. Digest it for a minute here, right? And what we're looking at, knowing that the 5A North will have 9 schools and that the 3A North will have 12 schools. So let's start breaking down some numbers and go right through the processes that we go. You can see where we go through number 1 all the way through 34. And as requested earlier, we also still have those rubric points for the 3A schools that are enrollment protected. That's on the bottom of page 10. So again, we're going to look at where we draw the lines, and I'll kind of open up for some comments and some suggestions. If you want to ask our staff, we can give you a starting point. If you want to do that, I'll let somebody ask you if you want to do that first, or if somebody else wants to give it a pray and say what they think where we should start. Okay.
I'd like to start with just guidance from the staff. It's not because of where your school falls.
That's a safe comment there. Thanks, Carl. Thank you. Today,
Staff. First of all, what Mr. Nelson said, I want to get the cartoon from the horses here and say 5A for the North. That's up to this committee to decide whether the North is 5A or 4A. We do have our own thoughts on that as well. I know Mr. Anderson, Representative 5A, can speak to that. What I had in the original proposal, Mr. Nelson, we start looking, obviously we have to take at least 9 based on our TPP, so we can't draw the line anywhere before Foothill. Foothill and Liberty, very comparable, 3 points apart. Liberty and Palo Verde, about 6.8 points apart. And here's where the gaps come. Palo Verde, which struggled this year within 5A, still a pretty strong 2022. Harborview is about 12.3 points, I'm sorry, 17.3 points behind. Legacy much closer to Harborview, and we start getting into the Cimarron, Sierra Vista, Las Vegas, it's all very close. So very long answer to Mr. Parkman's question. My proposal, my thoughts to Mr. Nelson, about the line between 11 and 12. How would be 5A, Harborview would start with it. Not married to it, but looking at the numbers, that's what it will.
Questions or comments to that within the group? Okay. Davis, you want to continue then, and we'll go through looking at alignment for 3A South.
In 3A here, we start with the teams that you see on the bottom, Golden, Walker, Bronx, Virgin, Democracy, and Meadows and Natalie. All 3A based on enrollment. Democracy and Meadows moving up from the 2A matter, joining us after the independent run. So we have 8 teams that we start with there. This does get a little tricky at the bottom. Sunrise Mountain working from the bottom up, obviously, has Mojave, do have those 2 teams in. Canyon Springs funny one to me because of 20 points this year out of their 22. But I have Canyon and Chaparral, which really struggled this season, both in the 3A, drawing the line, even though it looks awfully close to numbers between Desert Plains and Chaparral. So we would basically have a 12-team Southern Region 3A. Our 4A would end up with.
Does that include cadence before a?
Yes. Yeah, cadence has to go into the 4A at that point, enrollment wise, starting.
So again, we're looking at drawing a line then between 30 and 31, correct, Mr. Davis?
That is what I have, and again, it's just, you start splitting hairs in that area, and I can make the same argument between splitting Canyon and Mojave. I don't know that Canyon and Chaparral are in a position where they can compete in the 4A when we look at the top part of that, and all that.
Okay. Any questions, comments to those and where that line might be drawn for the 3A?
I guess Kevin from 4-5 South, to just talk through the process. I'm just looking at gaps where I see like, you know, Cheyenne the Valley, where it's got like a 9-point gap, where Desert Pines and Chaparral is only 3-point gap. So just.
Yeah, and it's difficult, right? I'm working from the bottom up on, as we start to fill spots in that way, we know Sunrise and Mojave. It's really hard to make an argument for them to go in more far. Now we take a look at that final number, but I also take a look at the 1 year closest to, and who's struggled and who did not. If we start to, we used to talk about this with our previous realignment committee, we talk about trending, who's trending in the right direction. When we look at a Desert Pines, which is very solid trending in the right direction after a 4-point 2022 season, it goes to a 32-point. It's still not great, but trending in the right direction. They're coming off of 2019, that they were still better than Del Sol. Came off strong 2019, and then everybody. That's what I look at, is trying to get where those teams are trending, because you're right, so we probably could have gone Cheyenne, we could have gone really as far up as Cheyenne, that would have been 16, that would have been our limit. And look at those teams having a little bit better of an opportunity to compete, just the deeper we go into that pool, the less chance those teams have.
Mr. Polzian, anything comment wise from what you see and having a history with a lot of those different schools that are in that mix?
Yeah, I told Bolton with 45 South. It's tough because I know with the 3A, there's you know limited amount of teams you can put in 3A. But as Mr. Davis just said, I mean, they're trending that way now, but they're not going to be trending that way any longer. I mean, they're gonna 4A, you know, coming off of, we're obviously moving up into 5A now with this current, and 4A is tough. I mean, there are a lot of really, really good teams in the 4A. So and being a parent of a baseball player and little plays baseball, I know kind of how it goes in Vegas. Like this is, teams are going to struggle. I mean, if you put it doesn't matter where you put them in 3A, they're going to struggle. They're going to struggle in 4A. But there's a lot of really good baseball programs. So I kind of darn if you do, darn if you don't kind of thing, you know, to be honest.
Mr. Larson.
Yeah, I didn't get any feedback from any schools in the 3A about baseball. I was just looking at those numbers too, and I think I keep going through my head, we're almost at a point where the 3 have almost enough enrollment wide, but I know that some schools are gonna be adding and growing, and so it's, I'm gonna say with Cody, in baseball, I think wherever we need to put it, 3A will be just fine with wherever that number goes.
And I think 24 to be 45 salary is a bigger concern. Again, with my past history in the 3A is there'll be a lot of lower level games that are gonna be missed, you know, which is always a concern. But again, it is what it is at this point. But to piggyback on Dallas, I mean, you got to do what's right by the kids here, regardless of the amount. I think that the better teams are gonna come out on top anyway. Doesn't matter.
Mr. Anderson, I'm gonna come back to you in the 5A, 4A north in just a minute. I want to finish these lines here. I know it's part and parcel of it, but if there's no other amendments for lines to go through, Dr. Higby? You know, good. No, Mike?
I mean, I think we gotta follow on, the assumption that 5A is gonna be stronger than 4A, 4A is gonna be stronger than 3A, 3A is gonna be stronger than 2A. I think you gotta operate under that assumption still. And, these lower level teams in baseball, like the Shaft, like Canyon Springs, like Mojave, like the Sunrise. And as Tony said, whether you put them in 3 or 4, they're gonna struggle. Based relative to the better teams. So, I think you look at where the breaks are and what the leagues can handle. I know 3A, we get a little antsy about piling too many teams, in there, one, because of the travel gets a lot and stuff like that, so, I don't think it's hard to whether they're in 4A or 3A.
Mr. Parks then puts 12 in the 3A South where we have a line proposed currently. Nice fit with the north. Any comments from you?
No, I just feel on the first one, the 5, are you point now, or you care if there's odd numbers? When we have an even number here, do we need to look at splitting things evenly, or doesn't matter anymore?
I don't think, sorry, Mark Davidson, I staff. I don't think we let the number of teams when we dictate where teams should go. We let whether or not they can be competitive dictate where they should go. In this case, we have 43 schools that would be 3A and above in baseball in the South. There has to be another number.
Do you want to ask Mr. Anderson then, is the way a line is drawn right now, looking at this for a 5A South of 11 schools, and then obviously the bulk of schools in the 4A South, where does the north fit in with baseball and a 5A, 4A? What's the desire of the north?
Art Anderson, 5A, 4A North, and I apologize, I didn't state this earlier. We don't, along with baseball, all the other spring sports, we don't intend to go down in any other spring sports. So, we plan on staying in the 5A.
All right, so we've got the lines drawn between 11 and 12, 5A South. We've got a 5A North still operating under the assumption or the request to stay 5A. We've got our 12 through 30 block being 4A South, and then up to the 5A first, then 3A, and then we're back in the middle with the 3A, 31, 32, 33, 34, 4 schools joining, otherwise protected schools that are 8 of them on page 10. So I think for baseball, so I'm missing something. That's kind of where we are. Mr. Northridge.
Something for Baker and our Donnie, can you put Cadence, which is down here, is based in the 4A on enrollment. They didn't have a team this year, are they are starting next year. And they will be in 4A with their starter program.
Their enrollment wise, that's where they have. We don't have any rubric in which to place.
Okay, all right.
And that's what.
Note on the bottom of the page. Yeah, because again, a new program, so not listed otherwise. So we're not gonna.
So let me ask, if they competed the last 2 years, they did not compete.
Did not.
Should they not get an independent status if they haven't competed?
They have to petition to do that. We're did the same thing.
Well, they came in, they had to come in for
They came in
for enrollment.
But they haven't had a baseball program?
They've not had a baseball program. That's correct.
So you're gonna have 2, so Cadence is gonna go to 4A?
Yes.
So you're gonna actually have 20 schools.
Correct.
And then out of those 22 of them, Durrell and Cadence will both be playing for the first time.
Durrell played this year.
They both had a program for the last 2 years.
Yeah, and Durrell actually made the playoffs. Yeah.
All right.
Were we not going in the direction that if you didn't have a program, you had to be independent for a couple of years to establish a program? Did we not have that conversation?
Well, we have a regulation that is coming up in front of the board as a workshop to be able to do to do that. Where we have been though is starting this realignment cycle, when we ask the school to declare if you have a program, is that we would start to fit you into the realignment cycle right now. That regulation, as I'm expecting to possibly be passed and dictate from this point forward. But as of right now, as a full member school, they're eligible to come in and go and play. They've got to sustain their program, or they could certainly, I don't speak on behalf of Caves, there's options for them to go independent, but they would be at least built into the schedule. Starting out until we get to, you know, possibly June 7th. Opportunity there. That's where they would be listed as our current regulations. Going forward and play. Anybody else say anything? I think we're to go through baseball for Lent.
Okay, so nice stuff. Just to recap for everybody where we're at, the line was drawn between 11 and 12. In the 5A, currently divided into 2 leagues, League 5 and League 6. In the 4A, we drew the line between 4A and 3A, doesn't find the chaparral. With the addition of cadence, that gave us 20 teams in the 4A. I have that divided into 4 leagues of 5 each currently, but again, the leagues have that flexibility if they want to condense to give something to a small number of leagues. 3A South, Chaparral, Canyon, Mojave, and Sunrise Mountain joining the 8 schools that will protect the enrollment-wise. First up in the region of 12, divided into 2 leagues of 6, the 3A protected teams. Put in the leagues based on their geography, and we have done the other 4 filling in slots. And as Mr. Anderson pointed out as well, the north would be 5A for exposure classification.
On holding board values of it, and as staff, are there any intention of these programs or potentially 5A previously that are being realigned down to appeal back up into 5A? Any indication from any of these schools?
Not that I've heard, that I don't necessarily know if they knew for sure where they would go.
Yeah, I just based on there's a pretty clear break in the numbers.
Yeah, Donna's staff, that's what we'll find out what you do, right? As soon as this goes out, you know, tomorrow.
That was part created out, and after we have all this set, if the team all of a sudden says, oh, we're not gonna have baseball anymore, is there any consequences if we get all this set and have these teams? Is there anything yet on that, or is?
Donna, that is a great question, Mr. Colton. We are dealing with that with the current school right now, with the sport of dropping and wanting to add 2 sports. And our office made communications to that school that will be in effect. We have a workshop for exactly that item. And so we're going to operate with that item potentially being passed very soon. That there will be effects. Yes, we're dropping a program and being able to not come back within that current cycle, and then having to be independent status for the next cycle as well. The program is dropped during a cycle. So it could be as much as a 4-year penalty, so to speak. And same thing with that, once we're done here, school says, hey, we want to add a program. You're independent, you can make a declaration to us, it's time to do this. So we're not going to go reinvent the wheel, replace you, because that could throw off state qualifying numbers, could throw off league alignments, odd numbers, and even numbers, just all kinds of factors that. So that is a very big topic that will be June 14th and 15th for their board meeting.
Rich, like Don, did you just tell? They were letting this cadence and without going independent? And then opposite will be just,
well, that regulation is going to be a workshop. As of right now, at the start of a realignment cycle, when a school is it a full school and full standing, right now wants to add a sport, they can do it. So we get through this start of this realignment cycle. That's when I think it changes after that. That's my interpretation of how our regulations
okay. Good, sorry.
Yeah, so I think we're to the point where we can make a motion for
So we made a motion to approve baseball as the 5A, 4A, and 3A have been established.
Tony Bolton, 45 South, I'll make a motion to approve the baseball, the alignment as presented by staff, with lines between 11 and 12 and 30 and 31.
And if I may, Mr. Foley, would you also add that the north large school enrollment would be 5A?
And then North Mark School Board alignment with name 5A.
Thank you. You have first, I have a second.
Art Emerson, probably for North, second.
We have a first and a second. Any further questions or discussions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you very much, committee.
Yeah. No, that's part of it. Yeah. Okay. Let's go to 8B. Sure, 8B. So. Maybe that's over there.
Page 11 now, the Northern Softball Rubric.
So again, to page 11, Donnie Nelson from the staff, page 11, this is your Northern Softball rubric, so just for your information. Again, we have Hug, North Valleys and Worcester already protected within the 3A North, so the 9 remaining teams in the, I'm now gonna call it the 5A North, but we'll have to approve it as a full motion, but Douglas, Spanish Springs, Reed, McQueen, Reno, Devani Ranch, Carson, Galena, Bishop, and Node. On page 11. So we turn our attention then to page 12. And we'll do the same process we just did here with baseball. This is for the Southern 5A, 3A, 4A, and where those schools will go and draw in lines. You can see again on page 12, we have some numbers and some breakpoints. I'll let you digest it for a quick second, and then I will ask if anybody has a particular thought in your mind. If not, you can direct us back to staff and we can make an initial recommendation just like we did with baseball. So anybody have an opening thought as to where a line might go for 5A, and then a line possibly for 3A, and of course 4A falls in between. Any opening statements or thoughts?
Tony Bolton, 45 South, and it looks obviously that between one on the similar line between 5A and 4A, and the top 10 is pretty head and shoulder, it looks like above. And there's a 21-point differential there.
Anybody else? If you want to hear from staff, then next.
Do we need to hear from Art about the North?
Let's get out now, Art, you would, I think you already said it for baseball. You want to say it again? Where does the large school enrollment division for the North wish to go?
Art Anderson, we're just gonna stay in 5A.
Thank you. All right, with that, Mr. Davis, I'm gonna turn it back over to you on behalf of staff, and we have a recommendation from a committee member, Mr. Polzian, that's in that line, for the 5A South, be it 10 and 11. We can say what we agree with, and then we can look at where the 3A line would be next. I'll turn it over to you, Mr. Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Nelson, Boyd Davis, and staff. Yeah, that line between 10 and 11 is about as obvious as it gets. The issue obviously becomes working the other way back up again, 3A to 4A. We have that same very problem. We've got just enough teams that really do struggle. Not a whole lot of places to put. We've got the 8 automatics again in 3A. Same schools playing the same sports. Working our way up from the bottom, pretty obvious that Western has struggled. I actually drew this line, not to go through team by team unless we absolutely have to. But I have Sunrise Mountain, between Sunrise Mountain and Desert Pines. Desert Pines ends up on, but I look at the wrong side of both Tuesdays. The reason again, Sunrise Mountain, if you look at how they're trending in that spot, there is about a 7.5 point gap there. Really not going to find a whole lot bigger gap in there anywhere as part of the issue. Sunrise Mountain's trending in the decline. Del Sol right behind has really cratered down this year as well. Cheyenne also very much a struggle. When you see those negative numbers, that really stands out. It's hard to get a negative number with the way the rubric's set up, simply because you're getting points automatically because we shrink the schedule. When you get into that negative number, it means you're losing an awful lot of games under that non-competitive loss, you're getting run with a lot. That's what's happening to those teams if you see negatives. Not only are they getting beaten a lot of their games, they're not getting to a sixth inning or maybe even a fourth inning. So again, DP Sunrise Mountains, where I've got that line for right now, creates a 14 team 3A situation, 3 weeks of 7, and it leaves us with 19 in the 4A and we include 8. Also good.
All right, questions, comments to around the group. Mr. Larson, I'll start with you this time. What's, you look at that for your 3A.
With Bart, on those I was saying, there's not much I can say the definite, this is where it should be. I don't think, I'm not too worried that baseball doesn't match softball in a 3A with 12 and baseball 14 softball. I think that's a bit, they don't really match those games up very often the same days now anyways. So I would go off our recommendation.
Mr. Kofer, I'll turn to you next. Anything that you see on your side of things?
No, I think, when it comes down to 3A, there's only one have more or less. So to me, more is always better for a variety of schedule, see different teams. From a charter standpoint, just games come in, democracy, of course, next down in 3A. So that is fine. And then matter is, strengthen their schedule through a couple of years of independent status. So they're operating along the lines of what we envision, which is nice. So, yeah.
Mr. Bartlett?
Yeah, I think those lines are good. I think, yeah, the same issues, but with the trend data, I agree with the staff.
All right, anybody else? No one, Mr. Parks, again, the difference in terms of numbers of schools in the 3A South compared to 3A North, it's personal comments close enough. I don't see any change in state representation because of that.
Nope.
All right, anybody else on softball? I know we've got Mr. Gears on there too. I don't mean to. T's not, okay.
Nope, I'm on board. I'm on board, Donnie. I like where the lines are drawn.
Thank you. I don't want to make sure we don't leave you off. Anything from your end, Mr. Gerzon?
Hi, Donnie. I agree with where the lines are drawn in between 10 and 11 and 28 and 29.
Very good. Thank you.
So at this particular time, we need a motion.
Kevin McFarland, 45 South, make a motion to accept the recommendation from the staff that in Southern softball, we make the cutoff between 10 and 11 for 4 and 5A, between 28 and 29 for 4A and 3A, and with the large enrollment northern schools being 5A.
Do I have a second? Already Anderson, probably 40 North. Second. We have a second. Any further questions or discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ron.
The ayes have it. Thank you.
And Mr. Vic, are you still on there? Just so I know if you go forward, I don't want to miss out on you, anything in the comment from a 1A standpoint, even contributing. Dave, are you on there?
He's gonna have to duck in and out.
I saw that.
He's currently darkening it.
Very good, thank you. All right, thank you, everybody. Let's go to 8C, Chair, that would be page 13 and boys golf.
Okay.
All right, Dinos and the staff, same thing again here on page 13, we have Hub, North Valleys and Worcester. Already set the placement in the 3A North, they just happen to be, North Valleys, Worcester Hub happen to be teams 10, 11, 12 respectively. So Reno, Spanish Springs, Galena, Bishop Minot, Carson, McLean, Douglas, Reed, and Divine Rank being teams 1 through 9. To get maybe what might be a formality, but I understand out of the way, Mr. Anderson, again, from the 5A North, wishing to stay 5A, Mr. Russo, correct?
That's correct.
Thank you. All right, in that case, let's go to page 14, and we're gonna go through the same process again now with Southern Boys Golf. We pick a line at 5A, and then we pick a line for the 3A, and then we'll see the group of schools that falls in between for the 4A. Anybody who wants to start off with an opening recommendation, you're welcome to do so. If not, again, you refer back to staff for a comment, but anybody for an opening recommendation can move. Okay, all right, Mr. Davis, let's talk about where we see the line from this police board.
The top end of things on this, it's actually really easy. Between 11 and 12 for Durango and basic, there is a gap of roughly 38 strokes there. That's the biggest gap that we're going to see in the area that we can actually make that cut. Basic kind of going a little bit in the wrong direction this year. Durango is going in the right direction. It all matches there. Bottom end of things is really good. We've got 6 schools at the bottom. They're automatically classified in 3A, so we have a little bit more wiggle room than we had in baseball and softball. Working our way up. When you see a number of 360 or 359 for a year, what that means is they didn't have anybody participate in any of those tournaments. They're getting a 90 for each one of those 4 golfers. The average goes across where they just didn't have anything. There are 3 schools that are sitting in question in my mind right now. All 3 have indicated when we sent the survey out, they do intend to field a boys golf team next year. Everybody intends to. The question is, do you actually get kids with clubs in their hands out on that first day? Mr. Cofer, I'm going to ask you straight up right away first. Your school was one of those that we're struggling to get golfers.
Right.
Well, you know what your situation was.
Well, we haven't had any golfers really since pre-COVID. I perceive this to have the same struggle coming in. So, you know, we would have, as a school, we would have no problem going independent status or whatever it is that, you know, I don't know how that relates to golf.
But at this point, you would, if you're gonna have golfers walk in the next day, you could still want to have a golf team.
Absolutely. But, you know, I understand the decisions have to be made, plans have to be made, so.
Before I get into anything, I know Mr. Larson did. Go ahead.
Yeah, that was our first, when we talk about team, are you talking about actually 6, 5, 6, or just having a golfer?
4.
Four.
Correct.
So what is our commitment? Are we saying we're gonna have a golfer, so that's our team, or we thought they're gonna have 4 golfers? So I just wanna make sure what we're.
4 is a team, 1 is not a team.
But if Eldorado or whoever say, hey, we're gonna try to have a team, are they saying we're gonna try to have a golfer?
This, and we get into splitting hairs here.
Okay, all right.
Because if we have a situation, like if you look at Sunrise Mountain, which this year had a score of 326.8, they're at the bottom end, working our way up. They had someone golf. Did they field 4 in any event? No. However, we get into a situation where maybe a school's got 1 and he's the best kid in the state. We can't shove them outside simply because they don't have 4.
No, I just, I'm curious how those.
It's just like tennis.
Right. So working our way up here, I have 3 ifs in mind, and Mr. Cofer was Slam was one of those. Cheyenne and Eldorado are the obvious 2, sitting at 360 for this season. They plan to have golf. They are not necessarily in an area where demographically you always see a lot of golfers. So it does make it rough. The other thing, we talked about this during baseball. I don't ever want the number of teams in the league to dictate where somebody should go. We know in golf, we have trouble getting courses. We know we try to put a number of teams in a league where it's not going to be obnoxious for a golf course to let us have however many tee times we need. That does play into it a little bit as well. It has to be out there. That being said, I went the full 16 on this one. The line drawn between Sierra Vista and Bonanza, knowing full well that we were sitting with 3 schools within that 16 that may not have any kids.
Bob Northridge, and I'm the coordinator. And golf's so unique too, in that, especially in the South, I will say this, that the coaches don't want a beginning golfer on a team. Just a kid that says, I want to play golf and has never played, they don't want those kids playing in matches. Pace is play, and there are numerous things that come into play. They ask them, until you can, shoot 110 or 120, whatever their number is, please don't bring them to our match. You get that also. You might have 4 kids, you might only be able to bring 1 or 2 to a match. And they even have a cut line. It's an 18-hole match. If you don't shoot 56 on the front side, and that's with double par, you sit the next 9 holes. You got to sit in the club. So, and it's just, we're running out of courses are closing. We're losing Desert Pines in the south. And it's one of those, they don't want a kid coming out and shooting 200, taking 6 hours to play. The courses don't want that. They don't. They work with your kid, get them a little better.
Go ahead, Mr. President. Tony Bowles, report by myself. Part of this play I could review. So, and pardon my ignorance, we're safe to assume that teams 26 to 35 probably are teams of 1, 2 golfers.
Less than 4.
They're not complete teams. These would be teams built in a schedule that could potentially be sending 1 kid.
Mr. Wilson, thank you for asking that question. That's exactly what I was going to do next. Is when you see 16 in the 3A, one of the teams and start thinking, man, that's 8 teams in each league. It's 4 to 16 times per team. No, that's not happening. You might see a couple that can fill out the full 6 out of that. Most of those schools that would be joining our traditional 3A schools, and even 1 or 2 of the traditional 3A schools, don't feel the full 6. You'd be looking at 1, maybe 2. Hard to predict what they're going to have coming forward. We all know that, but yes. Yeah. When you look at 8 and a leading, that 8 is probably more like 4 or 5 actually. By the time you do it.
Yeah, Dallas Archery South, and I don't know if this is for Bobby, but of those schools listed, do any of them have a home course that have hosted this last couple of years? Any from Bonanza all the way to El Dorado? Or is this gonna be where the
Bonanza had Canyon Gate, I do remember that.
Yes. Western has Muni. Canyon Springs, Mojave, Desert Pines had Desert Pines, but Desert Pines was stolen. But that's 3 times 1/7. Valley, traditionally, usually goes over the national. They're at the national. Shaft, they've been at different courses. Sunrise Mountain has a course. Cheyenne, El Dorado do.
and I just curious how we have to break up when we're hosting 3A matches, if it's gonna be doubling up at the traditional schools that have there, or are we gonna have enough places where we can have matches? So
We'll work with our golf coordinator on that, but I think based on what you had this year, those leagues were even struggling to get 5 matches in the league matches. Some of them only got 4 because they couldn't get course availability, and that's even 4. So we're going to struggle in one of these leagues to find enough home courses.
Without a doubt.
well, I would say, I'm okay with the 16, because like you said, that even if they're not full teams, we could accommodate that in 3A, and then maybe that opens up courses for 4A or 4A to have more availability on their courses.
So back to the proposal, then we drew the line between 11 and 12, Lorraine on basic. We drew the line between 25 and 26, Sierra Vista Bonanza. Between 11 teams in the 5A, a league of 5 and 6, 14 teams in the 4A, 2 leagues of 7, 16 teams in the 4A, 2 leagues of 8, 2 leagues of 8, which again, said very little chance of difference.
Yeah, my coach charter school, just for personal knowledge. Was the Meadows going 3A and everything? I don't see the Meadows anywhere here.
Obviously, not field golf in some cases. We will check with them. They may be, and that's why there's extra in there too. They have fielded the program lately, but they were unclear.
I would say, for the most part, they usually do.
Yeah.
Is that gonna be a problem then, if we're maxing out 16 and we don't have the medals listed?
Could be. I don't think it's gonna end up being, but it could be. We can certainly talk about that on 7 as well. If we need to slide Bonanza up at that point, that's what we'll do.
Cool. Yeah, sorry, Donna from staff, that great comments and questions about the Meadows. On their we just dealt with the school about this on their declaration for fall and winter sports, and I know exactly what my answer was, because you didn't declare, here's where you can't go in the next 2 years. What is, we need to know what the Meadows declared on their form. I know, and I don't know we have that right here, but I'm glad somebody said that.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that.
We just need to know.
Contingency in that, for that right now. I don't think that causes a problem, Mr. Anderson, if we put a contingency in there to say Meadows and Bonanza get phone well. And we'll let Bonanza be informed of that, so that they know whether or not they need to come with it.
Does everybody understand what we're doing right here? That's a little bit out of character, but that what we're talking about between 25 and 26 years in Bonanza could actually end up becoming between 26 and 27. We just gotta do some research on what the Meadows submitted to us.
I'm gonna text Ms. Mays right now.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'd really like to know. If we do that real fast, that would be a big help for us. Let's hold for a second and see if we can get a,
Is there a form and application on file?
that's what, yeah. You have that or? Lori had it.
Is it from, it's before I started?
No, it's just for this year. We sent up, yeah, I think Lori,
Well, I have there. That's the meeting.
that's what we need to do. Hold on, let's check. Let's get it. If it's declared on there, that's what we're looking for. That's what we dealt with in their school. I want to be consistent across the board, but of course, they declare or not declare as of today. Once we exit this meeting,
Boys ball there.
they declare, okay, so there we go.
Thank
We
you.
need, thank you, we need to add Meadows. Okay, so we need to add Meadows. And then that line becomes between 26 and 27. Thank you, everybody, for saving us on that. That's good job.
So at that point, Bonanza then would join the mountain league there. I will make that correction in what I have, thank you.
Yeah.
So that would be 15 schools now in the 4A.
Correct, we would draw the line between 26 and 27.
And continue to keep 16 in the 3A adding.
Correct, and put Meadows down here.
Thank you.
And again, we'll just, I know it's not trying to catch previous scores we just did, again, we will, for the 7th, we'll have the leagues shown. And we also know, again, that schedulers and league presidents have the ability to say, we don't want two leagues, maybe we only want one league based on the number of schools in a particular sport. Or maybe we don't want 3 leagues, maybe we want 4, maybe we want 2. That exists within the leagues to structure it that way.
Mr. Nelson, just to be clear on that, this information will go out to our committee. Hopefully tonight with where all the leagues are. We'll go out to the number of schools either tonight or tomorrow morning. If they are aware, and they would have a full week to digest and figure out whether.
Okay, so again, to be clear, then, Dinos and staff, 5A between 11 and 12, the rainbow, basic to the 4A, the 3A, the number between Bonanza and Western, between 26 and 27, so Bonanza to the 4A, Western to 3A, adding Meadows to the 3A, and then the 5A north is 5A. Think about it.
Yeah, for those of us that are joining on Zoom and on YouTube. Just so that they can visualize that, we'll be putting that up.
Thank you. Any other questions with regard to boys golf? A couple of you have been very eloquent in making motions to tie in all that stuff. We learned from that. I'll turn it over to one of our committee members to again make that motion of what we just went through, and we can help you with the motion. Not that we're making a motion for you. We can't do that staff wise, but would anybody like to make a motion to boys golf?
Sorry, Paul, before I tell myself, I'd like to make a motion that the 5A Southern Boys Golf be between school 11 and 12, remaining on basic. The 4A line be drawn between Bonanza and Western 26 and 27. 3A consisting of the teams below that with the addition of the Meadows. With the intent that the 5A will stay 5A and boys golf as well.
Thanks.
Excellent. Victory.
You'll have a second.
I was Larson in the second. Any further questions or discussions? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you.
All right, good work. Good work.
Page 15.
All right, 8D, Donnie Nelson from the staff, 8D, we'll start on page 15 with the northern boys track. And after I make a comment to Northern Boys Track, before we switch to Southern Boys Track, I'll make a comment, don't forget to say it out loud, so I remember doing it myself. Same thing exists here with Hug, North Valleys and Worcester being aligned already with the 3A. Those three schools just happen to be in rubric points to the north, 10, 11, and 12 anyway. So McQueen, Reno, Galena, Spanish Springs, Demonte, Range, Michigan, Reed, Douglas, and Carson would be your 9 teams in the north. Mr. Anderson, before we go too far, 5A North remain 5A North and Boys Track.
Correct.
Thank you. Okay. So with that, let's switch over to page 16. This is my comment that I'm going to make for what you will see on June 7th. I am expecting, I know we're going to see an appeal from it'll come through a school administrator, in essence representing the non-officially recognized Southern Nevada Cross Country Track and Field Coaches Association, that boys and girls track would be aligned in terms of both genders being in the same classification. You might remember per school, that's correct. This is a little bit along the precedent of what we did back in the fall with cross country. And you remember that we did approve that. So again, this is a policy and procedures meeting for today. That's an appeal for June 7th, but I don't mind saying that verbally, so you understand that that is something you will most likely, you will see on June 7th. But with that said, let's look on page 16 of where, for today's purposes, we're going to draw lines with boys track in this item for 5A. Same thing then with 3A, then our middle catch of the 4A. I will start off to the committee. Anybody have a initial thought where they see a line being drawn? Speak up. If not, obviously you can direct it back to staff and we will give you a recommendation from that point. But anyway, anybody in the committee, a line for 5A boys track, then a line for 3A boys track, and then 4A. Mr. Parks.
Ray Parks 3 out about the line, but you remember several years ago when we did this, we split them up. Then you had all these appeals to those coaches did the same. So if we do this, we're just gonna have a gazillion appeals, I would think. So I think we ought to address both of them in the same league right now. So we don't have to sit through all and make all the people come, they're gonna come appeal, say that they can't have their boys in one league and girls in the other.
I don't think, I agree with you, but as far as our procedures and the way the procedures go, how we set up, we can't do that.
We did it last time.
And I'll speak to that. Thank you, Mr. Partey. Don Nelson said, we all know exactly what you're mentioning, and to try and possibly save us some time. That information is not in here today because it is an appeal. So it would become on June 7th. And the appeal, being in full transparency from what I know, that appeal is not going to be on a school by school basis. It will be an appeal as a collective sport group. So I don't think it's going to be as cumbersome as maybe what we're being warned it could be. I think it's something the committee will be able to look at a document and say, okay, this is the document, everybody's appealing together, and that will save us hours of time. So I just, for that purpose, kind of the way it happened across country, and the way it got to that point where it's a collective appeal, I think we're going to be okay time-wise. Now, whether it goes through or not, that's a whole other issue. But for today, based on the policy and procedures, what we're doing is addressing boys track and girls track and field separately, and drawing lines for 5A, 4A, and 3A.
Okay.
But we know that's why I said, I want to, in our minds, we know what we may be looking at, what we will be looking at on June 7th.
You know what the definition of insanity is.
Hillary status.
Hillary. Dallas.
Now, if our 3A South, with that in mind, we just kept the 12-3A enrollment base. There is no problem with there being, all those schools that are both schools, they're the same, both boys and girls. Save a lot of headache, that's what's gonna happen, so.
Reading my mind.
All right, let's look at a line for the 5A first. Let's do that. And right, Mr. Larson, you're when you ask staff, we'll talk. So 5A line. What are we looking at? And again, if you want to refer to staff, please feel free to do so. But anybody have a thought?
12, 17. 13.
Anybody else know?
I'd like to refer to staff.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thanks.
Well done. All right, Mr. Davis, let's go.
There's a nice stat. It's not ridiculous to say, given their history of how good their program has been. We put in Coronado, got the line on for 5A, 12 teams putting in the 5A. Coronado has really trended in one direction this year. Bit of a surprise. But the gap is 48.5 points there. That's really kind of as big as it gets in the area we can draw the line. That's where I have it there. Go on to address where that 483 line is. Mr. Larson, you was beyond my line. There are 12 automatic 3As. In the bottom of that list. 3 of those are coming in independent status, 2 of them are coming into the 2A. And the answer to where to draw the line for the 483 is I didn't draw one. It was the 12 automatics for the 3A. And everybody with points that's eligible.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. Don Nielsen from the staff. I am going to throw a curveball at you. I'm not usually doing this, but I'm going to do it. Track and field is a unique sport because of the way we qualify a certain number of individuals from one side to a certain number of individuals from the other side to the state meet, and how the opportunities to qualify may impact team scores. A note with the 5A North having 9 schools. This is a little bit weird, right? Because again, we look about team competitive balance within a particular area of the state. Comparing that, is there any credence at all to it or not, I'm not sure. With regards to qualifying across the board, is there possible consideration about drawing that line after number 9 with Green Valley instead of 12 and 13? That's a complete curveball, and I did not even run that by Mr. Davis. I'm not saying that that's where the line goes. If you look at team points, team scores and total scores, what's the goal and objective for it? Well, the goal and objective, the mission of the policy and procedures is to create competitive balance within a particular class, within a particular region. What I'm suggesting is in face of it. It is more of a state-based comment. But again, I want to be very honest to say, is that a consideration to do that? So I think the line is, is it between 9 and 10? Is it between 12 and 13? Or is it somewhere in there? Clearly 12 with 650 and 11 with 662 and 10 with 679 are pretty gosh darn close. So I don't see a line somewhere in there. I see a line of, between 12 and 13 probably being priority based on the policy and procedure, but number 9 and 10 being a difference because of, competition. However, again, right? I mean, you've got and not because Mr. Polian's in the room, but you've got a powerhouse program that has a lot of great tradition in the sport, track and field, like Woodville, not being 5A. I mean, we already mentioned about Coronado. That's just weird. I mean, just
20 polls and 45, and maybe I'm jumping the gun, and maybe this is something to discuss on the 7th, but like you do that, like you say Green Valley employees are 9, but then if you marry the program, they're only 19. And I know the track coaches want to do it, that's the thing, but I think that's something to consider as well. That there's a completely different dynamic between the boys and the girls programs at some school. But again, I probably jumped the gun.
No, it's fine. Yeah, honestly, that's okay. You've made that comment. So, Mr. Davis, you were gonna.
So I was starting to figure out, Don, is yours just having a $9 going south, making it more school wise? Is that kind of what you're trying to say?
Yeah, Don Nielsen staff. Yes, in a very unique sport like track and field, that was just a personal track and field comment. There is a line that could be drawn there, because obviously we can't go to 8, right? We can't have between 8 and 9 Centennial. There's an actual line there, but we don't go that direction. We go the other direction of wanting to put 9 in there. So again, that is a track and field. I have no idea how the coaches feel about that. And again, I know that the coaches are coming back with something completely different. So in the here and now, does that really matter? Maybe it doesn't matter at all. Maybe that the number between 12 and 13 is where the number goes based on policies and procedures and how we're supposed to set this up. And then we let the meeting on the 7th take care of all that. That may be the point. That's just my point for today. Mr. Davis.
Support Davis and his staff. There's an explanation on this just in case. These numbers you see for the rubric, they are based strictly on the region meets only. All region meets for the South are combined, 3A, 4A, 5A, all the results are combined as though they ran is one giant meet. And they're scored out of that. North scored completely separate. How they do it state does not factor into the track. You'll see the same thing in swimming. To Mr. Nelson's point, that wasn't, I mean, I know we had the wrestling appeals after, but that was not something we ever addressed in wrestling either. The little bit that I do know about what I think is coming for that track appeal, I believe they were looking at 10 in the 5A. But I also know that one of those 10 is likely will be out of that group, so yes, sir. It could get a little bit messy. To me, at this point, knowing we've got an appeals hearing coming in 7 days, 8 days. Simplicity kind of wins out here to me in what I propose going forward. Confusing the rubric, and yet I say simplicity. But that line is between 12 and 13, and that's where the obvious jump out with me is. I'm not, when I do this, when I send that proposal over to Mr. Nelson, when we come here and talk with you, I'm not as concerned with other as other people are. How many teams are in the north and how many teams are in the south in the same classification.
All right, yeah. I just real quick, because maybe I missed that part of cross country. So we did realign the 5A South, 4A South in cross country, boys and girls being the same.
We had an initial proposal in that meeting that started over at McKinley Arts Center, where we placed the cross country team. We came back, the meeting at CPD in December, and that's when Mr. Cooper from Campus Academy came forward with that proposal that grouped the two genders together based on the total score.
Got it. But we shouldn't be looking, like Mr. Park said, we should not be looking at boys and girls right now together.
We just can't.
We can't do it. Okay. All right.
Yes, I would have done that before we could get a policy for your seniors and not let us.
I say, realignment could be very different in 2 years in how we approach all this stuff, but we have policies and procedures that govern this process for here and now. Any other questions, comments? Make sure I'm not missing anybody. Mr. Garzon, any questions, comments? Make sure I'm not losing you.
Not right now, Donnie. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. Anybody else? Anybody else in the room?
I have a question for myself, so the coaches are aware of this, they're working on it, so they'll have something to bring to us. So keeping it simple right now, let's see what they bring, it seems like the best.
Yeah, you will, Don has said, you will see that proposal in the June 7th packet.
And there's that.
The northern coaches are set because they already have their 5A, and I think the other 3 are still lined up for 3A. So it's not. They already lined up with school board deals just because of that. Good question. All right, anything else? We need let's work towards another report.
David, work it down.
One motion.
Tony, we need you to eloquently make a motion for us. Wasn't paying attention, there's got to be somebody else.
I'll make the motion. I agree with Donnie that the 5A should be between 9 and 10. And then the 3A should just be the 3A enrollment-based schools. The 4A would be means 10 to 35, and then the north would be in the 5A with large schools.
So yours is not the 12, but the 9.
Yeah.
That's your motion.
That's
Okay.
for track wise, I agree that I mean, at this point, it's not going to matter anyway, but at this point, just having the same amount of schools in north and south state for the sport track seems like a more logical.
See, I have a second, not in fail. Do we have a second?
They're all second.
Yeah, we'll need a roll call vote. Again, nobody's offended anybody one way or the other, how we vote on this, right?
Can I make one more comment? Yeah, because we're opening it for discussion. We have a first and a second. We are gonna do a roll call vote. Okay, just real quick, one more comment. It's. Will those coaches bring forth this proposal? Will they have it said that which program you're gonna match? Are you gonna match the boys program or girls program? Or are they gonna show, because there's some girls programs that are not nearly as good as the boys programs in the 5A South, vice versa, the other way around.
Bart Davis and on staff, is my understanding, they're combining the points for boys and girls.
Is what?
Combining the points, the total score that you see,
To determine,
I say boys and girls, and then go to determine where they want to place schools with both the boys and girls. 5A. That said, so that proposal is actually official here. I mean, it's my understanding, they're going top 10 genders combined in points to the 5. And then working from there. And both Mr. Cole and Mr. Anderson have brought it up. Yes, we have a situation there that we have in bowling, we have in tennis, where we already combine these genders based on policies and procedures, where one program is significantly stronger than the other.
and the comment I would have is that this is the first sport outside of football. This is the first sport that we have brought up the equal number of participants in the 5A in the North and South having to be the same, where the other sports, we have 10, 11, and as many as 12 schools in the South participating, and only the 9 in the North. And all of a sudden, for some reason, track and field is having that equal number is all of a sudden going to be a requirement. I don't.
Don, not a requirement. It was, again, it was something unique, and I did say with a curveball, throwing it out there. It's not, committee needs to work on the policy and procedure to feel where a break is. That was a comment about, does that come into consideration? Not saying it needs to, has to, it's.
But that's the first time that comment has been made.
Yeah, you're correct.
On all of the others, and I think it's a disservice to the southern schools with regards to how the procedures are being run, based on moving that to 9, whereas if that was going to be kind of consideration, we should have considered that in all the other sports and all the other previous realignments. That's all I'm saying. I could care less. I don't know what the difference is going to be. I know that currently, under our current state championship in track for the last 2 years, the southern schools 5A has had more teams in it than the northern schools. As far as participation, ours has always been 9. The South has been somewhere between 10, 11, 12 in those numbers as far as track's concerned. And I don't know if that's made a difference or not. I think the North has been somewhat competitive in track and field, both girls and boys. With McQueen winning the boys last year, and I don't think a southern team, a northern team won this year. I don't know if having less teams, 9 versus 12, makes that much of a difference as far as the state is concerned. And I'm really concerned why that's coming up now. That's all. The 9 schools. So. Right.
So really the motion doesn't matter, so I think once we get down there, we're gonna have to fix it, right? So we can talk here all day, but once the motion is down there, and if you went 19, oh, well, that helps north, right? So they're not gonna go for that once we get down there. So it'll be whatever it is, but I think we just need to move on with the motion because they're gonna fix it down there.
Well, even with that being said, we have to assume that we still have to do our job. We have to do our job based on our requirements and what we've been doing. And I don't want a vote to take place just based on the fact that we think that it's gonna change things once we go down there. I don't know.
Kevin, for myself, I guess I just have a procedural question on that, so. We're gonna put something forward today as the baseline, coaches are gonna work and they're gonna have some kind of group appeal. And then as the committee, we will accept that as a group appeal, or we could individually pull out school and move them from their recommendation. And then my question on that would be, is that mean that there's another individual appeals, or that group is it? I just want to make where does it end before we get going here?
Exactly, because the confusion here that takes place is that is the board going to make the realignment decision? Or does the board take it back to the realignment committee to bring forth the request and change, and we have to meet again for track only? Davis.
Thank you, Chairman Stahl. It's the right time for legal counsel in the room. Apparently. Procedurally on that, from your question, Mr. Department, we've been here today. They come forward with an appeal. You, as a committee, can either reject or accept that appeal as the appeal itself. We can't take bits and pieces out of it that we like. The other thing that I've heard about that appeal that is coming forward, actually the word unanimous. I've heard that it's unanimous, and yet we've got another school that's appealing that says, well, we don't want to be in the 5A, we want to be in the 5. So it's not really unanimous, and that's the decision that this committee is going to have to make on the study. But in terms of it, can we say, well, we like this school and that, and this school and that? That's what we're really doing today, this committee. When the appeal comes, it would be as though Mr. Cofer appeal slammed to be 5A unless we can't just say, we won't give you 5A, we'll give you 4A. We can't pick and choose out of that.
Mr. Larson, then I'll make comments where we are.
Now let's start curious now. Does it matter at this, I mean, with the line being driven further down, help in the appeals process, hurt it? Wouldn't matter in the field, like,
I'm pretty sure I know what the appeals going to be. I don't want to speak for them.
but if we say no, it's gonna be 9, that's not, we're not stuck to 9, and if there's a appeal, we can change that, we go south.
And again, we put classifications together before, we had 12, and so the appeal got to keep 13. So, no.
Be glad to amend my, then if it helps.
You
move it down.
You can withdraw your.
Okay. I will withdraw my motion.
So there's no motion on the table.
So, no, so that, so we need Mr. Parks in to also, we don't need to second.
There's no motion to second.
So Mr. Larson's withdrawing that, and then we give it 1 second. Okay, so now we go back to, so now we need a motion to pick a different line basically for 5A, that's what we're.
Or the same.
Or the same.
Right, yeah. Keep that.
So. It's all good. Yeah. 45, so I'd like to make a motion that we draw the line between 5 and 4, 12 and 13. With 13 and 35 making up with 4A, and then the listed schools 3A protected, and independent members will be moving up, making up the 3A classification. Okay. And pay the 2 sorry approval. Okay. Second.
We have a first and a second now. Any further questions or discussion?
Yeah, don't forget, and plus will be 4A too.
There's 3016 in there, they're just not listed.
Yeah.
Did that motion include the north being 5A?
Yes. Yes.
Correct. Yes.
Thank you.
5.
They're all Ray Park 3, all this money for you, so. When they bring this appeal to us, we vote on that, we match on this hopefully. Then the principal can then bring it again and say, that's not what I want for my girls track team, or is it done after 7?
The appeal stand is done. They don't, you can't appeal to the board after
No, it's not the way, the direction of the board is to have a realignment committee settle it. The board to say yay or nay, but not an appeals process for the board to decide.
So Renee, on the seventh, that proposal can come through, and then that school that say doesn't want to be, knows they have to be there on the seventh to make that appeal if that goes through.
But again, I mean, I've been doing this for a long time, so they can still come to that board meeting. A principal can put that on the agenda that says, I want my girls track team before they have one in the 5A.
They can only do that at public comment.
Correct.
They can only do that at public comment. We can't address it. We can't do anything. We
I'm
can't-
saying an actual board meeting.
Yes, at the board meeting.
At the board meeting, they don't get another appeal, they don't get a second fight.
Oh, it's gonna be done on June 7th.
Yeah, unless they, that's the board, whatever appeals are made to the realignment committee next week in June 7th meeting, whatever decisions are made, that then goes forward. The board approves that, then there's not an ability to appeal directly to the board at the board meeting by a specific school in a specific sport.
Ray, I will further answer this question. Not for the staff. A public comment could be made at the board meeting. The board being the final say to say, hey, we adopt as presented in the realignment committee. The board could say, we're going to adopt it, but we're gonna make one change on our own, and that's where it goes. But they're not gonna make a possible change based on an appeal. It would be action outside of that. Just maybe if somebody's public comment resonated with somebody, then that's where a change could happen. But there's no banter on a public appeal. Okay, so that's why, I mean, no banter on the public comment, sorry. No discussion on public comment.
I get all that, but you guys know that in the past, we've had schools that didn't like where they were at, so the principal came to the board, and the board changed that. That's all I'm getting at with. These guys are talking about these appeals, is that floating out there again, where someone doesn't like this track idea?
Mr. Parson, we can do to nip that in the bud from our end, and also, when this goes out to all the schools, we will let all the schools know, your principals, your athletic administrators, if you are going to appeal any part of this, including any other appeal that may happen at the June 7th meeting, it must take place at the June 7th meeting.
That'd be great.
Yes.
Kevin Brown for myself, so just a message from, Southern Nevada track, Coach Cooper, if they're not unanimous, they won't bring it forward on Sunday. So we won't have, they won't bring it forward unless they all agree. Thank you.
Thank you. So we have a motion. And a second. We've had discussions. We're gonna go do roll call vote. Okay, good. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you.
We're part one.
All right, let's go. Donnie Nelson staff will go to page 17, starting off with the northern 3A, 4A, 5A schools combination of track and field. Again, Hub, North Dallas and Worcester at 11, 9, and 12 respectively, already into the 3A North. 5A North, now I'll turn to Mr. Anderson here in just a minute. Galena, Reno, Douglas, Bishop Oak, McLean, Spanish Springs, Carson, Reed, Monty Ranch, and 10 would be the 9 teams for the 5A North. Mr. Anderson, to confirm again, 5A North, let's stay 5A.
Correct.
Thank you, sir. All right. So let's go to page 18. And I will not throw curveball out there. My apologies. That need to be stated. So again, we're gonna start with the 5A, draw a line, and then we're gonna look at the 3A, and then we'll have our catch for the 4A schools. Staff, we do have an idea maybe of where that line should go. Start off with Bob. If that's anybody on our committee want to make a first attempt at a comment on 5A or 3A.
South Park 3A South, I think the girls try to stay with the 3A enrollment, schools only. Like the boys.
Thank you. Anybody got an idea where we want to draw that line for the 5A? Anybody want to throw it up?
I want to know that part.
Our neighbors and I staff, unfortunately, Art has 2 lines. Both the top. You can obviously look and see that there is 122 point gap between Springs and the 9 and 10 salon. There's also a rather large gap between basic and Spring Valley in the 13 and 14 slot, and a whole lot of basics points came in 2023. 404. They were actually better scoring wise than 1, 2, 3, 4 teams above them. It was for that reason on the trend, I took it all the way down to basic. And also because we are looking at a rather deep 4A in terms of numbers. When we start throwing the Canyon Springses and RBs and Durangos and basics into that 4A with the valleys and bonanzas and the Sunrise Mountains, there's a bit of an equity there too. So I drew the line between 13 and 14 and what I sent to Mr. Nelson. On the bottom end, it is real simple to keep it at just the 12 3As that are minimum protected. And then I looked at Eldorado, which didn't have any evidence, and I don't really know what. I can go either way on that one, to be honest. As I sit here to look at the 12 and go, it makes it easier in 3A, sure it does. I'm doing Eldorado a disservice, I don't know. I would normally say yes, but I'm not sure it matters when you put it that way. If you're not scoring any points where you're at, don't guarantee you're gonna score points going somewhere. So, yeah, 2 different lines there in that area. If you look at Valley as a team also didn't score this year. It gets tough. How many teams do you want in there? What we think we're gonna see on the 7th comes, not that I'm exactly basing my recommendations on that. We're gonna be doubled up in it. But again, top end of things, I think that's where the first discussion needs to come as to whether this community would like to draw that line between Coronado and Canyon Springs, or between basic and Spring Valley, and not to lead you in any direction. But the one appeal that I do know of that would be coming from track is Canyon Springs wanting to be 4A. That said, that's an appeal. We handle that on Tuesday.
All right, team, get to work.
Everybody in that 10, look at and consider. Everybody is real close, trending wise. Durango dropped just a little bit, probably went up just a little bit. Canyon has really trended up from 2019. Basic, that's a huge one. But to what Mr. Nelson said earlier, and I really should have said this earlier, thank you for pointing this out, Mr. Nelson. The numbers are the numbers. Whatever somebody wants to do here to defend me, not that we should ever care about that, they're defending our office staff. We just need to do what's right, and the numbers will be interpreted differently by different people.
I'll say Kevin from 45 South, so just talking, making a motion, but so if the line say was between 11 and 12, however you kind of, then really, we'll talk about the bigger picture of boys and girls being linked. Really, Desert Oasis and Green Valley are the ones that would have the biggest concern, not Canyon Springs. Right. Sky Point also. So to me, 11 and 12 minimizes some of the things that we may have to deal with on the southern.
It does, and again, just for clarification, my line was 13 and 14.
Right.
So,
and then that's and then Durango's got the issue, yeah, right, I see, yeah.
So it would be more 13 and 14 than 11 and 12.
that's my proposal, Mr. Twelve.
Yes.
The community can do what it wishes.
Okay.
Yeah, so I just think, you know, regardless of where we put it. You know, Desert Oasis is gonna be split, Green Valley is gonna be split. Sky Point, they're gonna be split, and then Durango, vice versa, potentially could be. So those are the schools that we'd be looking at having issues with.
Basic is another one, potentially.
Basic, right, potentially.
Before I thought I stopped, and maybe that just comment is rattled in my brain a little bit. The 4-letter word unanimous that has become the bane of this board's existence. I mean, you just said Canyon's going to the field that their girls are gonna go 4A, so we've already blown the unanimous coaches proposal out of the water with that on.
I mean, unless Canyon would change its mind sometime between November as well.
Yeah, I think that's a big point of their coaches meeting tomorrow. That could be happening.
Let's still wait and see what happens here.
And then to try to have that conversation with that school about their reasons for doing doing it.
I mean, another main reason for it is because like in our situation, our head coach is the head men's and women's track coach. And that's the entire reason behind the proposal. Is because we're splitting. It's hard enough to find coaches. And at least we have more.
Change records in the top 10 for both.
Correct.
It's
Correct.
And again, keep in mind, I'm not leading toward doing any. That's the reason we do it for tennis. We generally have one coach for both programs. It's one of the reasons why we do it for both. We generally have one coach for both programs. That's also a facility. Track, head coach wise, we need to defer to the track expert on this also, and to Vice Chair Sloan on this. Track generally has a few more coaches that might have the same head coach for both programs, but you generally have at least a few more coaches.
Six.
That's correct.
Yeah, I can't answer about how many a particular district employees are hired or stipends. I don't know that.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the coaches are kind of by event or distance, not necessarily male or female, so, yeah,
That's what it's.
yeah.
So anyway, that's where we are looking for other discussion or a motion as to where that draw the line on that 5A. In 9 and 10, 11 and 12, 13 and 14, where does that go? And then where does it go from 3A? You know, what is it? Is it at 12 or is it with El Dorado making 13 or not? You know, that's. Where we go. Somebody put it out there.
Kevin McFarland, 45 South, so I'll make a motion, to defer to, the staff's expertise and make it, for Southern Nevada between, it was 13, 14 for 4-5A, and then between 34 and 35, making El Dorado in the 3A, northern schools in the 5A. As a motion.
Thank you, sir. That will, I don't mean to lead you, Mr. Carlin, but also to include the north being in the 5A, the large enrollment.
Yes.
We have a proposal. Second.
Also,
Second here, any further questions or discussion?
Yeah, Dallas Larson, Gray South, was El Dorado 4A or 3A girls track activity? I don't know if you have that on. Okay, I couldn't remember. There's.
I would try to go off my.
Boys,
That's.
For girls track.
We're gonna look it up real quick for where they lose past cycle gets completed. Yeah, my memory is saying that, but I think I know.
Girls track was in the 4A district.
So they got 0 points in 4A. You're about to 3A this year.
Yeah, and Mr. Larson, that is a little bit misleading because again, we just take all those regional times and combine them. It may have just depended on whether or not El Dorado had a PPE qualification standards. But
so one thing that I'm just being made aware of, Durango was in 3A last year, we can't put them in the 5A. I think I'm
correct,
I need to withdraw the motion.
correct.
People watching, listen.
I gotta, so I will withdraw the motion at this time.
The line could still be drawn between basic and Spring Valley.
Yeah.
It would have to be an automatic placement. Again, my apologies on that.
So I think you can amend. your-
Okay, so if I
just
get
that.
Okay, then I'll keep my motion, but amend it that Durango is placed in the 4A because they cannot move 2 months. Yeah, okay.
Excellent. Thank you. Good job, everybody. Appreciate it.
Which one does make?
Yeah. You can sign in a second.
So we have a first and second with that amendment of moving Durango down to the 4A, which would give the 4A schools now 24 schools.
We get a 5A plus.
for
Yeah.
23.
Yes,
So,
yeah, those are.
And this going up.
Yes, yeah, that's.
So we have a first and we have a second, Dallas?
Yeah, so Bart, I know we were. So the reason they would score 0 was they didn't have anyone meet qualifying times, or
They didn't have anybody participating all times, I'm unclear whether or not.
they would
Basically.
the top 10 scores points in track, correct?
Top-
And the
top
top 8 scores, so they could have been defeated, just not had anyone score in the top 8 in the event as well. In the board.
Correct.
And that's, Mr. Larkin, that's also in their region, there were 2 separate region meets within the 4A.
So they didn't even score points in the region, not the state. Correct. Did we have a motion set?
Yeah,
So we have a motion and we have a second. I'll do it here. We have a first and a second, we've had discussions. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Nay. We have 1 nay. Thank you. The ayes have it.
All right, let's go to, boys. Yeah, we've got 12, 15. There's a possibility we might finish our 4x4 placements and then take a break before we talk about then number 9. We might finish that at 12, 15, might be good. Right, page 19, this is your Northern boys and girls swimming and diving, I'm sorry, Northern boys swimming and diving. Again, same thing holds true with Pug, North Valleys and Booster, they just happen to be 12, 11, and 10 respectively. But the 9 that are the largest moment division in the north, Galena, Carson, Douglas, Reno, Reed, Spanish Springs, Minor Ranch, Michigan, Nova, again, McQueen. Again, to confirm, Mr. Anderson, Northern boys swimming and diving is wishing to stay 5A.
Correct.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Lauren.
That, let's go to page 20 then. Page 20 for our Southern boys swimming diving, we'll find a line to the bottom to draw for the 5A, then we'll find a line to draw for 3A, and then we'll have our catch in the middle for the 4A. So our staff does have an idea of where those 2 lines might go, the 5A lane and the 3A line, but with that, maybe you don't want to step on your toes in your research you've done. Anybody committee wise would like to make a starting point for 5A, which for Southern boys swimming and diving. You want to explain points, Mr. Davis, can I do that first?
Oh, sure, let's do that.
Okay, let's do that, that's,
Again, points here come from regionally only, no state involved. Again, spoken word here again, is just like in track, we were anticipating seeing something on the 7th where the genders through the Coaches Association may wish to combine either 2, so don't be surprised if that does come along. That means that same boat where I've got 2 lines wrong here. There's one really terribly obvious one, and there's one kind of underlined one at the top that I'll let the community discuss.
anybody want to take a first jump at it?
So my guess would be that the first line that you would have would be between Clark and Sierra Vista.
Can't draw it there, unfortunately. We have to have at least.
That is, look at my little sweet lane right there, like, that was like, that's like the real huge,
Yeah.
yeah, but can't.
Okay, then so 10, Arbor View. And stuff that, and then between 14 and 15, Doral and Basic. Is that close?
You're real close, you go down one more line after basic, we see a 427 move drop. Between basic and Rancho, which is the really terribly obvious one. The underlying one, and again, it seems ridiculous to say this because the gap is really not all that big. Between 12 and 13 at Centennial and Green Valley, or Green Valley. I don't really know how they went from 1,004 to 582 in the span of 1 year. That's a massive drop. Especially for a program that has been wow successful. Doral's tailed a little bit, Basics actually on the upswing. So kind of got caught in my own head in this one as to where to put it. And that's where certainly recommend, and I get what I told Mr. Nelson, that this needs to be a community decision without me trying to lead you, because I'm deep in that.
Yeah.
And if you want to take into account before you get there too, the fact that we do have those automatics in the 3A based down below, that does include White Pine, which had competitors this year ready to go and never had a coach. So they could not compete. They do have 9 of them sitting down there at the bottom, bringing that same issue that ran into, or the Bell out on track, the Bell Silver and Cheyenne, both said 0.
And then several had zeros.
That'll have zeros this year, yes. They don't have an explanation, so I don't know if they just did not enter anybody. But it's not as precipitous a drop. Legacy went the absolute opposite direction. 0 in 2022, 392 this year. It's a sport that if you get caught with the wrong teams in your region, the way the qualifying goes and the way the scoring goes, you may not get anything out of that. Just because some of these teams are going to be 4 deep with the qualifiers in certain events, and they're going to push it out.
Nine else been said, Mr. Davis, I know we start at the 5 years.
Correct.
But I don't want to forget the stuff, the 3A is that we have with White Pine being now listed on there. That's 10. And so just keep that in the back of your mind when we get to the 3A, that the most then we can go would be 6 more in 3A, correct? 16.
I think we're just seeing 9. 9.
9.
Did you add White Pine in there already?
I did. I just put it in there. White Pine.
White Pine's already listed. On
Yeah,
there.
oh, right there. Oh, there we go. Thank you.
Sorry, I'm a lot of people.
Good. Yep. Okay, so we're 9. All right. All right, back to the 5.
Sean Jarvis, 2A. Isn't the bridge too far and you're keeping northern? North is only going 9. Is the bridge too far to keep that line between 15 and 16? And I'm having all those, that's too many boys. I mean, because Mr. Davis alluded to Green Valley. You'd hate to have them, I mean, maybe they are trending down, but Green Valley would be the 4, they're probably just, I mean, probably turn back up, and they, I mean, you could get along in 5 areas, but numbers.
You would think that there's a possibility of that, certainly because they may have just been too competitive of a region meet this year, or they were getting squeezed out of points one position. Swimming is a little bit different than track and how they score it, and that the way we do the rubric for the South in swimming, you're actually 16 scoring positions deep in each event, that both the championship final and the consolation final are scored. So we scored 64 places between the 4 region meets all the way through.
Or you move the line up to 14, 15. Think around, everybody else ignored that. Similar scores, I mean.
Mr. Fitzsimons is a philosophical discussion because I try, and I try to stay out of that. But again, it's all of it goes into how we figure that out.
Shouldn't a lot different track.
This obviously gets a lot easier if we could draw the line between 8 and 9. Unfortunately, that's just not an option for us based on the politics.
You said we put a different. Similar to track deal.
That's my understanding is that, I don't know that for gospel at this point, but it is my understanding that it is like.
And the premise on that would be that they would combine the boys and girls scores at the meet to determine the state champion.
No. What they would do is they would combine the rubric scores and just put them here for boys. And the girls, the rubric scores, the totals, those teams with the highest goals of those would be slotted into the
Okay, that would just be replacement, so state champions can still be a boys state champion and girls state champion.
all we're doing and all they would be doing is guiding us as to where to place programs.
Okay. Do we have somewhere in our bylaws that if, let's say, for example, we have 15 5A 7 schools, that they would get more representation at the state than North would have because they only have 19?
No, we don't, but Mr. Solar, that would be something this committee and then at the board of admissions could discuss when we get to China.
But the way it's being set now.
So we try to avoid that.
Correct.
Good. If that's the goal, if that's the goal of avoiding that, that's fine. Not any problem.
Part of it, and this group will remember too, when we started getting into use of rubric. And going to the sport by sports. There was kind of an understanding between the North, especially we got 3A wise, that they would go 4 and 4, 2 and 2 for teams. That kind of bled over then into the 5A as well, with very depending on what the northern large school classification would be, that they would try to keep it.
As close as possible. So in looking at that and staying consistent with what we're doing, I think moving that thing anywhere from more than 12 or 13, to me is kind of out of the question. Whereas I see the break now more between 12 and 13. I don't think we built it a 5A league in the South with more than 12 or 13 schools.
We've gone as high as 14. That was our next sort of going into this. The realignment study that we just completed, we were within the window of 10 to 14 in the South End.
I think we need to stay consistent with that in some capacity, regardless of what they're going to do.
Yeah.
As far as their appeals. Go ahead, David.
I'm far more certain in the training than I am in this. Mr. Nelson, is that what you?
I agree.
But that being said, we have heard from at least one coach, I believe, who talked to the principal in the South, who was, I won't say organizing the driving force behind it, was certainly gearing in that direction. In swimming is another case where, and again, our representatives in the South, or Vice Chair Sloan, we generally do see one coach for both programs. That said, in a sport like swimming, it really doesn't matter against whom you compete during the regular season. It matters where you're classified when you get the policy.
So, Mark, can you just go again, we're the 3A, 4A line, just repeat that where you read on that, your recommendation.
The 3A line, I gotta make sure I'm on the right pages here, because I'm just hired to give it out information that's inaccurate. I actually went quite a ways up on this one, because we do have 9 out of the mix that are sitting at the bottom. I did go all the way 6 up to Desert Pines, to draw that line between Silverado and Desert Pines. And it does kind of fight what I've been telling you all along with the trending thing, because you look at Silverado. And 264 to 0 does not help. Total points wise, the Silverado belong with Chaparral, Vegas, and Eldorado. Yeah. Can we take all of them? No, there's not room for all of them. So that is where it is. But again, I can wrestle in my own head and say, you can draw that line between Western and Mojave just as easily.
That was on the 3A South, I had between Desert Pines and Silverado, where I saw the real, and that's a much different sports. Correct. Swimming, golf are very similar, rather than track is more than different animal, so swimming is more like a golf.
And again, you're looking at
Teams.
Mojave's, Sunrise Mountain, some of those schools, they don't even have a full team swimming, do they in most cases?
Yeah,
Well, we could absorb that very easily with 3A.
when you look at some of those teams, careful what you brought up. they don't even have enough kids to put in a team out there. In some cases, they may only have at least one or two in a gender, they obviously need 4 for a relay team, and we're only letting kids compete in generally 2 individual and 2 relay. So it does make it a little bit difficult for them to know the depth of the class.
As long as 3A is okay with that.
Oh, that's good. I was just wondering.
Are there any schools in the 3A current, or that were in the 3A that have been bumped up into that top 15 area?
Good question, we're not jumping 2 classifications.
I did look at that as we were going here.
Okay.
Thank you, Eric.
We can check.
Kevin, for myself, I'd like to make a motion to have the 5A North in the north large enrollment schools in the 5A. And draw a line between 5A, 4A in the south, between 14 and 15. Between 4A and 3A, between 28 and 29.
And with the north being large enrollment to the 5.
Fine, only 45 is out that second.
Thank you.
We have a first and a second. Any further questions or discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you.
So let's go to girls. Swimming and diving, page 21. The northern listing, again, just for information, we have Hug and North Dallas and Booster already for 3A, that's teams 12, 9, and 11 respectively. So then Reno, Glee, and Divine Ranch, Douglas, Spanish Springs, Carson, Bishop, Minogue, Queen, and Reed at number 10, being the 9 teams into Mr. Anderson, the 5A North, correct?
Correct.
Thank you, sir. All right, let's go to page 22. Same thing we just did, Southern girls swimming and diving. We'll draw our first line for the 5A, then we'll draw a line for the 3A, and then we'll catch our 4As after that. So take a look at numbers and see if anybody again committee wants to start. Otherwise, you can refer to a verbal recommendation from us, from staff if you need to, but take a look at it here for a minute. Where we want to go. 5A line first.
Councilman, for yourself, I can say this looks like part 1 where the 3A get absorbed all the way up to the 16 teams, and then it looks like we right there now. Between 3 and 4, and between 27, 28.
Big part for definitely be good for working straight. What is what line status going to be again? Have they indicated on their?
I did communicate at least a lot of what kind they do intend to have. Swimming and diving next year, it's really all a matter of whether or not they can find a coach. Please look at Ireland's. Thank you. We go. As well.
Kind of a problem, just commenting, if we, at the top end, if we went between 11 and 12. Then we're gonna have a split with Durango, going with the girls being overrated compared to boys, and then Clark and Sierra Vista, so we'd have 3 teams. That would have issues. But that would be it if we draw it between 11 and 12.
Yeah, and I was gonna say, I know that during the regular season, obviously done by the coordinators and the schedulers. Always do their very best of their abilities to schedule league competitions and, groups and blocks of schools, because really for swimming and diving. It's about getting qualifying times to get to the region meets. And I know our meet director, for the region, needs to do her very best as well to. Try and make it work, however it all works out. To accommodate the coaches to the very best of her ability and our abilities with regards to a region meet schedule, days of the week, and just for whatever.
Pretty interesting. 5A, 4A North.
How many teams were in the 5A South the last 2 years? How many schools? Maybe, yeah, were boys and girls similar or no?
Girls swimming in the 5A the last, sorry, both days in that stat. Girls swimming the last 2 years, there were 11 schools in the 5A.
Maybe.
In the boys. Worked out well, they were also 11.
Okay. But they weren't necessarily the same.
They're not.
Okay.
Swimming is kind of funny though, and then you have a handful of those programs that are usually very good in both.
Well, it looks like the year.
Looking at that's what you're thinking about as well.
Either 11 and 12, 12 and 13.
Yeah, you can look at trends.
Chairman Stoller, I will tell you, 11 and 12 is what I use my initial line. You can make an argument for between 16 and 17, you can make one for between 15 and 16, there's a whole lot of lines. I put it between 11 and 12. When you start looking at those teams from 11 up, especially where they were this year, they're all scoring, exception of EO, which is 991, 32, they're all scoring in the 800s. Ideally, you'd love to draw the line between 6 and 7. There's a big area, you just can't do it.
Yeah.
So I did have it between 11 and 12.
11 and 12, 7, 28.
Dallas, if you're looking at that, where do you see, we're not there yet, I know we got to go to 5A, but where do you see that from the 3A?
I said right there between, between Del Sol and Canyon Springs, you could max out all 16 teams.
You would take that all the way out. I will tell you, Mr. Wilson, that's why I have my initial recommendation, but that's cool. Like I said before, these numbers can be interpreted very differently by different people.
Was there between Sunrise and Desert Pines then?
I was actually two games in a row.
Well, that's what your motion, when you're ready. No, when you're ready.
Right, and don't, I mean, don't let things that I'm saying necessarily affect how you're interpreting these numbers, interpret them as you do it.
Kind of the problem, is there a concern of there being different numbers in 5A? We had 11 going both of them, we just made 14 as our recommendation.
Directed to me, to staff, or the committee. Mr. President, I would tell you to me, there was not a concern. To everybody else in the room, with me. My bigger concern is to try to put the kids in the spot where they can be the most competitive.
Yeah, lot of ways there.
Is there any issues with Dallas Park Grace South, with getting pools for, is that a? Well, is that?
Okay, there's always an issue with getting pools, that has been discussed in the boys. Where we put you,
We don't have issues at this time, folks.
Okay.
What do you mean?
I'm just saying, if there's bigger number of 3A or 4A, it doesn't matter who's at what pools for those competitions are.
No, I don't foresee that.
Yeah.
there shouldn't be from a scheduling standpoint either, simply because as we mentioned before with the boys. It doesn't really matter against who you swim during the regular season. You're swimming against the clock more than anything else. They do try to line up duels. I believe that's still the case in a lot of cases down there. Ms. Guerrero or the poor leader down there does a fantastic job of doing that. But it really doesn't matter if you're swimming against a 5A school or a 3A school on a given day. Those duels don't lead to anything for qualification standpoint.
Like staff recommendation in between Eldorado and then to create a staff recommendation, I'm giving that.
I'm gonna change your mind.
What's that at there? I don't know if it's 5A4 ahead.
Yeah, maybe, Mr. Carly, you might have to start us off with a motion just because of the 5A.
Yeah. Okay, so Kevin Crumpel, myself, would like to make a motion, for girls swimming and diving. That the large enrollment schools in the north will go 5A, and in the south, we will have, division between 5A and 4A, between 11 and 12. And then between 4A and 3A, between 32 and 33.
We're looking for a second.
Yeah, I was Marston, curious now, I'll second.
First and second, any other questions, further discussions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gerson.
Any opposed? The ayes have it, thank you.
All right, one more, I'm gonna try to bring lunch right on the queue, huh?
No, they're hitting the ball. Boys volleyball.
All right, let's go to page 23, if you would, please. Page 23, we'll talk about boys volleyball. So I'm not gonna joke and say, we don't have Northern boys volleyball here. I'm just. Another day, another time. All right, here we go. Let's, again, look at numbers, what we've got for boys volleyball, and plus, of course, again, note on the bottom is 4A. Look at line, same thing, 5A line first, 3A line second, 4A the middle catch-all, look at the trends. Anybody want to take a first look at it compared to, before asking staff for a thought process, but we our thought process is right along or different. But, where do you want to go with boys volleyball? And again, I know this doesn't involve much of the whole room here, so.
Yeah, I think the recommendation would be great to start here.
Okay.
Okay, before we go anywhere on this, take number 13 out of the equation for 5A. They were in 3A. They cannot go to 5A.
So they will be in 4A.
They will go to 4A, regardless of where we draw that line.
Very good, thank you.
Okay, and then we'll submit it for it. And plus is an automatic. Because of their appeal to be in 4A. Where I drew the line at the top, now I'm looking through it after 6. Room between Silverado and 11 points. With an 11-point gap in there. Both of those teams were heading upwards from last year to this, not so much from 2019. But Bonanza probably scoring wise does belong more in that group of Park Basic, Norman, Liberty, Mojave. You can't go all the way that deep, really shouldn't. It just made more sense for the biggest gap. Remember when we talked about negative points in baseball and softball, and those teams falling all the way down? The reason you don't see that is you look here at boys volleyball, we do have a non-competitive loss factor in boys volleyball. Same as we do in girls. You get swept and you lose every set by at least 15 points. That happened, I believe, a half dozen times total all year, all matches that they were eligible. We just didn't see that, a team being that uncompetitive where they were starting. So it does tend to bunch everybody together when that happens, but top end wise, I do go between 11. Bottom end wise, Founders has indicated to us that they are continuing their program. They're going to have a program. We do not have a 2A in boys volleyball. Founders goes into the 3A.
I like White
Correct, exactly what Bill Thomas said. Cristo Ray having its program, they're new. Matter having it, Sloan having it, Urban Valley, which sat independent this year, will come in as well. So we've got 5 brand new ones joining the 4 existing mathematics. Going up from the bottom is a bigger headache, to be honest. I actually had this one at really a grand total of 10 teams. I just had Kate's.
What can you cap that? 16? Did it go
Good, good. I thought it was a little bit rougher trying to separate.
I agree.
Somebody else can find better breaks in here. Fabulous.
Where was your break for, 483?
Between 35 and 36, that was staying up.
So just Katie's going down.
Yeah, I have Katie's going down in the areas, and I can really go on the fence and go with Katie's.
As you can tell, guys from the staff, you look at. On the 3A, 4A side, and right, you got similar trends, similar scores, it gets to be tough, this is just like even on the offense side, there are. Numbers leading into the total and the totals themselves that are very close.
I will tell you that as the guy who does all this stuff, putting numbers in, thankfully I've automated some of it in my life, just complete hell. I do this the night of, I sat there knowing we had state data the next day. Tried to go through this, tried to come up with a recommendation, and I don't think it's, because there's just not anything natural in there to touch. I drew between Silverado and Bonanza 11 and 12 at the top, and between those and Cadence 35, 36. But again, with Cadence, that's another one of those where you can just get the quarter out and flip it.
Sean, sample to it, we drew the line in the bottom from 30 to 31. Go from 30 from Bonanza down to Doral plus the Anthos is 20.
Can't have that.
Can't have 24 versus 5.
Before it.
Oh, 4.
Yes, that was the 3A.
So 4 groups of 5, 5 groups of 4, like these. And then but Dallas has 9, and 3A we have 9. That's each are normal a lot. These nowadays can. I mean,
And part of this that I think we also. Mr. Anderson cut me off if I get off topic here, that we need to look at going forward in future cycles is when we have these ones here for the 3A that Sloan did recommend that we have. That needs to be part of consideration eventually as well, is when you look at a boulder that has been really freaking good in 3A boys volleyball, putting some of these cadences and low season cadence turns into other kinds with them, does that really do those schools? And you can make that argument for every sport that we've done. It's just not something this committee, this really needs.
Mr. Fitzsimons, I know from the staff, just looking, you said between 30 and 31, or are you looking at what, a number total? Then you're looking at Doral was the last team kind of in that group to really, well, no, Valley excelled though too, they went from 30 to 44 and.
yeah, I was trying to see what's trending.
Yeah.
I think that Morales made a case they're trending. I was also looking at some of those schools, 31 down to 36, where it's 5 schools really kind of grouped together.
Okay.
Based on my experience, knowing Dallas at 3A and being at 3A at one point, it's just a different sport. It's, I don't know, a lot of those. Yeah, some Park County people here that sometimes are important, you can't field the team and valleys and westerns of the world. This is important.
Boys volleyball, Mr. Times, I believe we were all good in terms of that. This was the question whether or not they had 100 people. Here's the jail.
Lower. Well, Dallas.
Dallas are great, but when I look at some of that's just. We get too small. Or we get not, people want to come out and we'll have a burden plate on from those different schools. That.
It depends on your flavor there. Do you want to go with a 9 to 10 team? You can play everybody twice.
Yeah.
Fill it out, or do you just want to play? That's a scheduling concern that I honestly I don't want to say.
No, I look at those teams, but they're all pretty close. Western Valley does it, when I watch us play out through there, I don't see a big difference between any of those schools being 3A or 4A. I look at the numbers, the cadence, local gap does seem to be the biggest one there. And then. Other than that, it'd be up to Western, between Western and Doral, I guess.
That, Mr. Larson, not to speak for you, is that what you're thinking? It's either an A is between 30 and 31 for the 28, or between 35 and 36, is that what you're looking at?
Just look at the numbers, yeah, I basically straight on the numbers. Once again, I kind of like the old bigger school 4A. How, you know, with having more in the 3A, we can look at 4A.
I think it's pretty uncompetitive sometimes, but the bottom there versus the upper four, so I think it's too big a difference.
So kind of the same, the uppers.
Yeah, so if the numbers help you, good, if it doesn't help you, then I think the four is adorable.
What do you know?
Yeah, Mike, but what shared liaison, I mean, you know, personally, you know, watching the 3 boys volleyball, it is Boulder City. So, you know, I think it's a matter of whether we want to direct, well, okay, well, let's get more teams in there that can compete against each other through a regular season, maybe come up with a second number, you know, number 2 or number 3, it really makes a difference, or do we want to keep it thin, you know? And just like I said, have everybody go against it twice, you know, that's kind of a 3A liaison.
As it's only a southern sport, too few makes that state tournament seem like it's just a league over again.
Yeah.
Whereas at least this year, there was enough teams where the state tournament took place, you know, it kind of had more of a state feel, because there was.
I mean, quite honestly, I know from a coach standpoint in our program, it really depends on like what basketball players or soccer players are going to decide to come out and add that as their second sport. You know, I think that may translate to a lot of those other schools that are doing, get that second sport, that kids doing something. Whereas in Boulder City, it's more something where, you know, they're getting after it. There's gonna be something they can afford. Now, you know, certainly all teams can grow there because it's kind of a new, for a lot of those charter schools, and I think a lot of them, it's a new sport, basically. How long has boys volleyball been a
Great, so that's never got.
Yeah. Well, okay, but it is
3A. It's the rubric, when the rubric is when the 3A
because
south.
this is the first year you guys had boys volleyball, isn't it?
This is our second year.
Yeah, first year version, yeah.
I think so. Tony wasn't quite how I said, I think too, just thinking back on my 3A days, the wider the pool, the more likely your local teams are gonna get games.
Yeah. And there's a lot of multi-sport.
Because if you start with line up games, there's a good chance Sloan, Monterey, they're gonna have one team. So you're gonna lose those lower level games if you don't have a wider pool to pick from. And that's so detrimental when your younger kids aren't getting to play. We ran into that in 3A basketball. And that's, again, it's kind of a 3A only issue, but that's certainly something to consider. You want your lower level kids developing too. Not just playing, you know, your varsity team every night.
Yeah, I was like, Chris, I think El Dorado and Desert Pines, I believe, were the only schools that didn't have a B team in the 3A South. That's those ones I know for sure.
Schedule, sorry.
Yeah, that's those I remember for sure canceling that we had to. We only got 2 officials, we only had 2 games, it was not 2 officials, we have the. During the varsity game, we have officials doing the lines for us, so there goes, that's why we're.
Bob Langford, Southern coordinator. And I just asked Mike this too. The goal of the charter school meetings, they have middle school boys volleyball league. That's pretty. They get a lot of games in middle school, correct? So I think it's gonna be, especially for charter school, a growing sports, you're gonna really see them come on and all having varsity JV programs, they have really cool. Need a motion. Or at least, yeah. Where we want to draw that on.
I'm not gonna make a motion, but based on what I'm hearing from Mike, I think the 3A, I don't wanna make a motion for the 5A right now, but the 3A looks like we'd like to have that line further up, add more. I think that seems like to be a good step in between the 30, 31. Seems to be a good breaking point there.
We could put 15 teams in the career.
Yeah. 15 schools.
Tony Bolton, 45 South. I'd like to make a motion that the, Southern Woods Volleyball, 509 be drawn between 11 and 12. The 4A3 line will be drawn between 30 and 30, 30 Park, remaining 4A. And then plus will be entering the 4A division as well.
Thank you. Motion, do we have a second? Second. Any further questions or discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it, thank you.
All right, so let's finalize, I think, Mr. Anderson, we could have a final motion and a second and an approval of item number 8, which is totality. We could do that. I mean, we've done them all individually, but I think we did that last time, just as a clarification. Just to wrap up number 8. Everything has been done. Total?
But you don't need that.
You don't need that?
Individually.
I thought we did that last time. All right, I'll double check our minutes. All right, we don't, then we don't.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's you guys go to lunch. Let's go to lunch here for, what, half an hour?
Yeah, 40.
Okay, 20 minutes for lunch. So you need to get our desk. Yep, okay, let's go to lunch. Right, everybody. So we don't need you to be.
We're gonna go ahead and bring the meeting back to order. And we're going to go to agenda item 9. For tournament format and alignment of schools from 23 to the 25 school years for Buffalo.
Yeah, thank you, Donnie Nelson staff, start on page 35. 35 was 4x4, just like that in the packet. For everybody's information with regards to tournament formats, we have been making the decisions in the second meeting. I would caution the group that I think is still in the best interest of our decision process going through, finishing today's meeting and getting into June 7th, that we follow the same format, that we really do tournament formats next meeting. Part of that has to do with, we don't know what kind of appeals are gonna come out of schools on a sport by sport basis, how it might change representation. I also may have groups, a group appeal, right, in a sport or two also. So I think we can hold off on that. However, there's still value in going through this today and getting a head start and understanding of what we did 2 years ago, or the last 2 years, and how it may still transfer over to doing the same thing, possibly or not, for the next 2 years. So more than anything else, if you're okay with that, I'd like to still spend some time on here going through sport by sport, page 35, all the way through volleyball, page 40. And then we can exit here today, possibly at a time that for some of you, if you want to get on an earlier flight, traveling back, possibility. So I'd say maybe a half an hour could work, but let's see where we go. But that's, so let's start on page 35 with baseball. Mr. Davis, you're gonna go, let's start with an introduction of what we've done. And again, a quick recap on the regions, because those are more local, internalized, how we're formatted, but mainly a little bit more time on the states. We'll start with baseball. David, do you want to recap the 5A, 4A, and 3A?
Nelson, Dixon, and staff, you know, we 2 year old intelligence, you know, what we're there for. We did kind of change up a little bit in 5A North for baseball this year, and had that elimination game, kind of sitting out on Friday, there was talk about, is the start of the tournament, is this a playing game? Like to get out of that confusion. They did switch it to North, going Monday to Friday, this year is supposed to be. Past. Pretty much everything is.
Wait, what did you just say about Monday, the playoffs?
The northern region, like Monday through Friday this year for the baseball playoffs, they finished the Saturday the past. But they decided to move up a day.
The north.
The north.
What if, in the south also?
The south has been doing
Today, the North changed to match what the South is doing.
Then we always ended on Saturday.
No, the North to the South changed that the last cycle. The North stayed the same. Then this year, the North did change the match. We played on Saturday.
the state tournament finished up on Saturday.
Yeah.
Yes, we're talking region.
I'm the 4A region.
Yeah, the 4A region turned into a different animal because we've got 12 teams in that. And then you play off the whole week, it starts a little later as well, so it's pretty good.
Thank you.
Yeah, the 3A North, obviously, I think, some parts you guys are switching that up a little bit, going to the straight. Same number of teams in the east and the west, as opposed to one system.
More than the point system, because unless we could do it for all sports, and because there's more than 12 in some sports, it makes sense to continue with points. If you can't be mandatory crossovers, so we're going on. 2 leagues, there are 2 leagues. Each, if there's 1 big league, then the top 8. Football top 6.
Mr. Parks, you know, yeah, baseball, softball, you should have 16 tournaments, but being double elimination over 3 days, if you expand that to 8, or you just.
Yeah, I'm kind of hoping that you got some ideas, so we're gonna definitely go to 8 teams, so we're gonna go 4 and 4. But to make all that happen in baseball, does that eat up an entire another week? And that way, if we lose a week of the season.
You have, if you have a 16 tournament that's double elimination, you have to have a minimum of 10 games, because 5 teams have to lose games. You may have one. When that switches to 8, it's a minimum of 14 games, and obviously when you. If you're a team that fights back through the loser bracket in the tournament that you lose early, it's a whole lot of games stacked up. For your travel purposes, that may be something.
So we're looking at the the first round, the higher seed is at home, they would play that. And then we trim it down, then they can play. But if we finish on a Tuesday, I don't know if we start the actual championship until, the pitching. Until a Friday, Saturday, or even until a Saturday, so. We don't want to lose another week of the season, but I don't know how to make this work in an 18-1 and not do that.
When you talk about that 18 and having the first round where it's at the higher seed sites, you don't eliminate anybody in that first round either, because it's a double elimination tournament, and you gotta lose again. So you can even look at maybe doing 14 pods and playing that down a little bit. There's lots of different ways you can go, and I don't want to get too deep in the rabbit hole today on something like that.
But I guess the question I have for you guys is, no matter what, when we go to 18, why lose in one full week of season?
I don't think you have to, depending on how it's set up, but travel concern wise, it's very different for the 3 and North, than it is for the Southern.
But the pitching wise, the amount of days and all that, I can make it happen or whatever. Remember, these guys got 8 pitchers and kind of 2.
Yeah, and the way the 18 tournaments go in the South, and for that matter, the 5A Northern region, it is spread out over 5 days, Monday through Friday. Set up for that, so. The winner's bracket team actually gets a day off of that. The other thing that the North has to consider that's not quite as big of a problem in the South. What happens?
See, the security of all the games we've got to make up this year, they paid up the entire, so that right, even remotely happen, and we have to do 2-week thing.
Yeah, thank you about workers. Whether that's what it is.
Yeah.
Ms. Nelson,
That's right.
and I know we had discussed this, not much we want, next year, the unique year. Did we decide to roll that spring season back a week?
We're bringing that back, June 4th.
I think you need to consider that also, that if you're short in that season, a full week, now you've got 8 teams, that just makes it easier short. Okay? Was that, was that because of the exams that we were talking about? No, it was when the calendar was right after. I guess the one thing I'd say, the concerns that we had in the last board control about exams. I didn't get a single concern from principals that were involved in that, the kids that take exams early, it's not the big deal that I was concerned it was gonna be this last spring.
That's good to know, because it's coming back on the agenda, possibly, and an entire week earlier.
Right.
So.
And I think, but Ray, you have to take that into consideration.
Sure.
I thought the whole season's gonna move up, not lose a week, but just move up the whole season, right? Wasn't gonna lose a week.
Correct, right. What's coming back in the board agenda, and I don't want to get too far off topic here, is to shift the entire season, finishing the week earlier, but also starting the week earlier. What happens in starting the week earlier is that first practice day is, gosh, it's in the middle of February.
Yeah.
Half year, sometimes this year, there was a vaccine going on for middle of February. And then trying to go indoors, trying to say you can't have a field, but basketball. And it was an extra week lap over too. So, we'll save that for June 14th, 15th, but that's good for now.
Hey, Mark, can I send you over thinking?
Anytime.
Okay, next part. Is that it?
That's it for baseball, unless you guys got any questions, because again, I'm just gonna sit here and read this all.
The only thing actually, part of my notes to say is the 4A state baseball, potentially obviously not being necessarily 2 leagues, possibly 4 leagues. We'll have to work on all that as we get the structure out after today, leading into June 7th. How we look at it.
Mr. Colsey, real quick, the 12-team tournament, because I know football is a part of that, obviously, with baseball. Does that seem to work out well from what you've heard, Mr. Egglesby?
Yeah, I think so. The bigger concern was it never felt like a state tournament. I mean, I know we get a week where it kind of resets that, you get to down to 4, but really at some point, like to reset it, really brand it as a state tournament. Otherwise, it just feels like a really long regional tournament. To kind of, I mean, I'm not discounting, us winning, which was great, but it just, we figure out a way to that, those last, like 5, 8, 3, 2, right, those last 4 games. This is the state, like, we're playing to get to that.
I thought the big tournament felt real good, great vibe, great
No, what's the bit? It's just a long region tournament, you know, I know the joy of being in 4A, but otherwise, like pitching wise, it works out great, because if you're in the winners bracket, you get a full week to, you know, you reset, and but if you lose, it's a long ball. Get everything loaded.
So that everybody is understanding this, we set that up in such a way where the 4A plays Wednesday through Saturday the first week. Then gets a break and comes back, and this year was Thursday, Friday, Saturday, where those remaining 6 teams, 4 of which already had 1 loss, came back for that Thursday.
And no, one thing with baseball, and I know we talked about there's gonna be a proposal from the coaches. And I definitely, there's not a perfect way to have the timing of it, but being the school that's on the edge, like our intention is to appeal up in baseball. But if it's gonna be, depending on the postseason, it may not be, you know, so there is some concern about not having what the postseason is gonna look like. And the appeals being in the same meeting is problematic potentially, so.
And we, obviously, from our office, we can't speak for this committee or the board, but I will decide inevitably on something like that. I don't. We haven't had huge major sweeping changes in these tournaments before, so I think it would look something similar, but well, the proposal done, so you're done.
No, that's, no, I understand. And state tournament wise, I don't see anything changing in the 5A between 2 north, 2 south. State tournament wise, 4A obviously we'll have to look at the structure, that'd be 3A, same thing, 2 north, 2 south, is what I'm assuming we're going forward with. And then it comes to, right, a region tournament, if the appeals granted at the 5A level, you know, you can go into 2 leagues and how many teams that each league qualify, is it again the same kind of a Monday through Friday or Tuesday through Saturday tournament? So I don't think we're too far off of what we're gonna do. Unless something happens, which now we don't know what's that. So.
And I will tell you that I get really reluctant in backloading tournaments at the end, just I'm the guy who's always scared of where's the flush. And when we don't have any time to make it up. So.
I think the biggest concern that I got this spring was how the site with 3A was decided the last couple of years, because I get it, you got trying to find posts, I get that. Burnley offered, because they knew they were gonna have a good softball team and wanted to have as much as Virgin offered, because they had a great softball team this past year and wanted off. I don't know, there just seemed to be a lot of like, how, or just wait and see who has the best team and then they'll host, so. I don't know if there's a better process to determine that, or if you're at the mercy of the schools offering to host.
I think comment, I wish we could tell you today, we're there. I don't speak of Art, but I wish we could tell you that.
I'm gonna be 2 years out of there. What we're finding out from venues is Merrill is the top of their list, and we kind of have to wait and see what we can get in that cluster of that.
I know we talked about it once, but the 5A has been with the 2As and 3A, 1As. Is that, we talked about maybe switching that 5A, 3As together? I mean, was talked about that, I do know that the 3A, once again, because we're not with the 5A, missed out on playing at in the South last year at the Aviator Park. This year, we didn't get to play at UNR because we weren't with 5. So the 3As in some sports have been left out of certain venues because we're not with the big dogs, per se.
You want to move to the big dog there?
Not on the same day. This as, I think one was for my 3A, I didn't get to watch any 5A, 4. I'm just, first, so. I didn't get to watch my 2A Westland number Wolverine. No. Anyway.
So how about the mess of the Super Bowl and everything down there next year? Do we adjust for that, or the rooms, or are we thinking about maybe moving it, flipping it up north and then doing 2 years south, any of that? Or that would be a major financial.
So state basketball is back together. Minus the standalone classification, so that means 5A is always still south. So 4A, 3A, 2A, and 1A are in the north for state basketball next year.
Good.
5A south. So in that case, there's no rooms to worry about. So we're not
Yeah, we're off the Super Bowl. There's no layover like that. The Super Bowl's earlier. So it's really, it's really.
Swing is in the south.
Wrestling is the South, that is correct. It is the weekend after the Super Bowl. Yeah, let's go, okay, start, yeah, so let's go, we need to get going. Yeah, all right, let's go, anything else, please? All right, softball, page 36. Softball, see how much we mirror baseball moving forward. Mark, go ahead.
It's pretty much the same thing, only real change here is in Northern Ireland. This is really teams. They're able to play in 3 days because they use their school generally has no fields this year, so they've done a little bit quicker with that. We went 2-2 the state, and 12 before we went 2-2 the period state. It pretty much goes hand in hand.
The same thing, our leagues, through our presidents and schools will have the opportunity to really look at how they want to construct their state qualifying tournament. Right, and a lot of onus goes back into our schools to do that. Our event, and I name over it, but a lot of construction by the local levels. Right, boys golf, page 37.
North South do things a little bit differently here, in that the North does kind of go 6 in the 5A for the qualifiers, the South has a qualifying standard, and they use that for 5A, use it for 4A, they use it for 3A. What we did the last go around, if you remember, for those of you who are on this committee, we actually for the 5A, had approved 4 teams from each side, plus the individuals who go to the state and figured out we're not getting 2 times. Backed it down to top 3 teams and top 6 individuals. Getting courses, as we saw again this year, even up here, was an issue. And the changes that were thrown at us at the last minute more than any one year.
And, rate roll, of course, haven't charged us, that's changed. And I think out of our, between region and state, we have 3 different courses charged in NIAA for use. And that's never happened before, ever. So we're only one of, it's 11 cities, Donnie, that don't charge for postseason. Schools individually, most states have to pay to go to postseason. We've been lucky, but that is changing.
Do you believe it's time that we have a postseason pacing plan? I know Bobby brought that up. This has been an issue as well. I've been in this position for years. But when we're having kids in the 3A shoot 110, 120, 125, maybe we need to go second day qualifying because that slows the pace of play. When you compare the 3A scores with the 5A, wow, night and day. You're not shooting around 6 hours, not being 6 hours, but maybe that's, I don't know if that's this committee, but maybe that needs to be taken into consideration second day qualifying. I think that might salvage some relationships with golf courses.
And Ms. Sloan, thank you for that, because I'm on the same page with you as that, but we have heard there's kind of a little different deal between the North and the South. The South automatically has, what we talked about earlier, those cut scores involved where you can't make it through 9. Done. See, the North doesn't do that. And when we start talking about tournaments, we've got one side of the state very against even trying to do circle 10s in some cases, or double pars in some cases. They won't be able to play those holes out. And they want those kids that are traveling from one state to the other to be able to get their 36 holes in. Like I said, I'm going to do on that. We have to look at not having a 7.
Let's be realistic. This is state.
Right.
You have to have the best of the best. And when I go to the, golf matches, things like that for pros, second day, sometimes we just didn't make the cut.
Right.
And I think, I hope it doesn't sound callous, but I think we need to do that.
And I think that means something too, that is to get into our meetings with the coaches in fall, that we can address that through that as well. Obviously, we're looking at tournament formats on June 7th. We're gonna make a decision on that. We probably, we can do that as well. So we can probably speak with Mr. Smith, Mr. Sims up here, Mr. Thorne in the south. And kind of see what we come up with.
Yeah, because we're losing the course because basically.
We're losing for a number of reasons, but that is.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, we're getting a lot more schools playing golf and less golf, we're losing golf
Yeah.
courses. I mean, there's different reasons.
We have talked to the staff even about starting to charge admission for golf, which is something we haven't done. Possibly turning around and giving that money to the course to have some other options. But it's beg, borrow, and steal right now to try to get out there. And it doesn't make it.
Yeah, and it's, like I said, this is the first time, and I've been involved in golf here over 40 years, high school golf, that. Of course, they're just starting to charge, they charge, not the school, they charge the amount.
Well, why wouldn't we, why wouldn't we charge? Because it's state.
It's hard, it's just hard.
It really is, though you never been caught.
You don't have anybody car, most people don't, most people will walk.
That,
We would prefer to rent a car just for the fact that kid's golf course month.
Mr. You're talking about charging the schools or charging fans, charging exams.
Yeah.
It does become a little difficult because in some cases we may be starting on hole one for a tournament. And the courses may have somebody still coming in, playing on hole 10 in the back money that day until we get to that point. The entries at all courses went the same. Where I was from in Ohio, they did charge, and this was years and years and years ago. For the region and state meet, very controlled limits. Need to work with the courses on that, something we can certainly do. I'm a proponent, I am, but it's also a philosophical change that we've done, and that's not always easy for other people.
You know, I'm looking at the Elko state tournament last year for 2 and controlled entrance. You got one entry, parents could, they're gonna go through, and you have a ticket gate set up and you charge.
Yeah, we have to work with the courses on that to make sure, obviously, they're okay with that too, and to see what they've got for other tee times, probably events even that may be going on somewhere else in the facility. When we held the state tournament at, the region tournament Pike, they have three
18 holes, multiple entrances, would have been impossible to try. That was the 5A region south out there. There's no way. And a lot of times too, like Mr. Hayes said, you got public play before golfers and public play after. That the course, they want those. They're not giving us the whole course for the game.
Maybe wrong, great parts of it, you know, we're accustomed to paying for tournaments all the time. I don't see anything wrong with saying that you were gonna pay to participate in the state tournament. As long as then I know the board adopted that, I get a budget for it, budget X amount for my golf team, and they don't make it. I mean, we pay for every other tournament, and you know, state stuff, but if I go to a basketball tournament, we're all accustomed. I don't think any people have a problem, you know, paying for that if you need in advance. But I mean, you better get ahead of the game, otherwise you're gonna have one happy day when all of a sudden you just say, no, and guess you pay this amount.
Yeah, so it's kind of.
good stuff. Here's, go to traffic field. Page 38, thank you.
actually kind of easy in terms of how the qualifications go for. Take me, it's been 4 and 4 for the 5A, for the 3A, one and 2 things are different, and I'm not worried about that right now. The 4A has had 2 separate region meets, and qualified the top 4 out of those. One for their state meet. You can see what how they qualify for region that's in front of you. And without, I don't want to get too deep in the weeds on this one, simply because we just don't know what's coming.
Any questions on track and field? Okay, page 39, we're meeting that.
See track and field.
Yeah, and again, in the north, may operate under, you have X number of entries, and the south may operate under, you get 1 automatic entry, and then any other additionals up to the maximum limit of 4 entries per event have to meet qualifying standards. We've left that local between south and north, how they want to do their entries for the region. Any questions on submitting that?
And all of this is said exactly what
This is what we currently have.
And boys volleyball, page 40.
18 state, 5A, 12 and 4A. 3A, again, we need the 2-2 in the next best 4, because Mr. Larson said they can't do it in all sports, may not want to do it for any.
They could do it.
did do this year, we did have a free state championship matches all in one site. It did create for a really nice atmosphere. It also created for a spot where I had 4 police officers in front of me, and I want that at all times. But the atmosphere was great for that 5 match at the end. It was one of the host school ended up participating in, actually ended up winning. When you looked at the bracket, didn't really expect them to get to that match. They pulled it up to the semifinals and got there. Pros and cons to both of them. We had to start the match at 3 o'clock on a week where kids were getting ready for exams or kind of finishing up some other stuff. The last match of the day was supposed to go off at 7, and went up really close to that, but it did go the distance, and we were there kind of late that night. But again, real good atmosphere for that day. I'm real happy the fire marshal was there. Put it that way.
Sorry, Mr. Beers, we go back to looking at that here real quick. And look at the 3A Southern region. A little confused on that one. Just to go through.
Oh, yeah, it's because there's a copy paste here, sorry. It's called 3 Southern regions, one of the items we really track and field. My lack of sleep is
The bulls that have it.
but don't hit it in the water.
Yeah.
That's great. Now, I'm just, the boys volleyball tournament, that way was Thursday, Monday, and Wednesday. Was that the boy baseball, softball, or I'm just kind of curious why the.
Partly to help out with the official standpoint, so that we never had more than 6 matches going in a day, because we had received requests from them, that they did not feel like they had enough tournament quality officials to have in that. So we tried to space that out so that we wouldn't have any more than 6 in a day, and in most cases, try to do one.
Was the 3A the only one that went that Thursday, Monday?
Yeah, we had the 5A one, I say Tuesday that first week, then had kind of an extended layoff before I went Monday, Wednesday in between that, then came back because they had the extra time with 12. That's something, Mr. Larson, that the days won't always be the same, kind of rotate through that, and hopefully by the time we get around to setting this next time, the SNOA will have some more officials and some more tournament party officials, and we can kind of make it a little bit more smooth for everybody.
Depending on Wednesday, that just.
Well, that's something we've done with boys volleyball. We just take from the state tournaments in baseball, softball, track, swimming, so the administrators can track.
Yes.
Yeah.
Being new to the volleyball game, boys volleyball. Pro volleyball, plenty of years.
Those are weird ones. I mean, good to do that, Mr. Larson, yeah, the commission will give a discipline administration to the as well. There's more events to try to do that. When we have southern only thing, where we can kind of separate that a little bit better, it does help.
Hey, I'll tell you, if you want to go to the principal and talk about that, right, because boys volleyball is southern only sport, why we've done what we've done, doesn't mean it's right. If at some point our administrators or principals say, you know what, we're okay with whatever we need to do in figuring our way around the state for other events, and we want to finish on a Friday night during the state weekend, like everybody else, go and let us know. We'll leave that to schools. We're more than welcome to, I know that question came up from a couple different people, why? Well, we've always done it that way, here's why we've done it, I think it's right.
And I think in the past, Tuesday semifinals, Wednesday championship, in all correct cases, and I tried to build in that extra day of preparation, day of rest in there, so you can actually have a practice.
Yeah, that has come up quite a bit.
And yeah, honestly, I don't know about anybody else, but I know. We've been working on Saturdays for 3 years now with just league games, in some sports, so. Saturday's just another work day for us at this point, for the most part.
Different than how it used to be.
Yeah, I'll give feedback for the next.
Please do, yeah. All right, anything else with regards to spring sports item number 9, we've got a lot to bring back.
Anyway, because when we set these forms, we don't want to put dates next.
Yeah.
Make sure that everybody's got a chance to think about it.
The formats don't necessarily mean the days of the week as of today, yeah, that's correct.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'm gonna I'm not actually pretty action on 9. Jerry, listening, last comments, anything on 9?
We'll move forward past that and we'll go to public comment. Right here.
Going to public. This time provides an opportunity for citizens to address the committee about any matter not on the agenda. Items raised during this portion of the agenda cannot be deliberated or acted upon until compliance with notice procedures of open meeting law has been accomplished. Members of the public who wish to submit their comment via email or instructed to contact Teal Wonder prior to the meeting to have their comment read into the record. Members of the public present need to complete a green public comment card and submit it to the administrative assistant prior to the opening of the item. A limit of 3 minutes per person and or 5 minutes for a spokesperson of the group will be imposed for both in-person and email comments. It is requested that you be directed to the committee as a whole. Comments that are determined to be irrelevant, repetitious, offensive, inflammatory, willfully disruptive, or deemed to be personal attacks will not be permitted. Public comments received by email will be read into the record. I will give a motion. Thank you. Live public comments, if any, have been requested, will be heard. Do we have any here today?
Thank you for all real quick. I got
Yes.
Ray Parks are in 3A. So maybe unintended scheduling consequences. I just want to bring this up moving forward. So when we didn't do the mandatory crossover, right? So now 3A North has to find 6 games and volleyball, basketball, girls basketball, baseball, softball. Then when these districts went to the 4-day work week and they can't play Monday through Thursday, finding a game is almost impossible. So keep that in mind 2 years from now when we realign. I think you better, if you're in a league, you're gonna play that schedule. Because now, you know, won't forget the little guys out there, because these little schools, these kids are gonna have 10 games and that's gonna be it. If they all stick to that Monday through Thursday thing, they're all moving to it. It's almost impossible to find a game.
Is every single school going to go to a
Or, it's Humboldt County is the only one in that whole area that's not, and they're being pressured to them, so if you're kidding them. So it's condensing.
All right.
There you go. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Hey, I think you're running.